seem to be getting any further beyond that. But my tablet has not.
Mine had to update the other day.
Oh, it finally moved. We've got plenty of time with all the public hearings.
All right, we are go for launch.
Good evening and welcome to the November 15th, 2023 Henrietta Town Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Belanca, Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the preceding meetings?
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I move to approve the minutes of the preceding meetings from October 25th, 2023, which was a regular meeting, and November 8th, 2023, which was a special meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. First up, we have special use permit application number 2023-038, Rock Faux Shop, 339 Jefferson Road, to modify previously approved special use permit applications number 221-051 to operate a dine-in and takeout restaurant, and number 2022-049 to have outdoor seating. Now also allow alcohol to be sold and to have occasional live music. You have a representative from the business coming up. Introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you're looking to do.
My name's Vile Sisavat, and I am the owner of Rock Pho. And we will be serving Vietnamese and Thai food. And we're hoping to get a liquor license to be able to serve on premise.
And is this the old, like it was Pickle Nicks and a bunch of other?
Yes,
Okay. And you guys did a bunch of updates to the exterior already, is that correct?
yes.
Becky, just question, are we switching this to a new style special use permit? Restaurant permit with the check boxes? Or did we not?
Yes, this is one that they had approval for the restaurant before. This is just to modify it to also allow the alcohol to be sold and to have occasional live music. So this is one that they had before, and they had the new application with the check boxes to add those additional options.
Yeah, I knew it was an existing one. I just wanted to make sure we were switching to the checkbox so that in the future, if, you know, it's basically recorded and stays with the property and under the new style. So, okay, great. I don't have a whole lot of questions. I don't know if others do.
Is the occasional music inside? There's nothing outside, correct?
We do have a patio
Would you have the live music outside or would the live music be inside?
inside.
Okay, thank you. So the real change is just the serving the alcohol.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
The live music is one of the check boxes though.
Mhm.
Whether it's live or.
There's really no residential around that.
No.
I have no.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing anything online? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-038. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the special use permit application 2023-038, Rock Faux Shop, 339 Jefferson Road, to modify their previously approved special use permit application 2021-051 to operate a dine-in and takeout restaurant, and number 2022-049 to have outdoor seating, to now allow alcohol to be sold and have occasional live music inside.
Seconded.
So again, I'll note that this one new permit will replace the two previous ones because we kind of combined the
Okay.
outdoor seating into the
I see.
new style permit. So,
Okay.
any further comments, questions? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Councilmember Page?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. So if you want to do a ribbon cutting, I can put you in touch with the Henrietta Chamber of Commerce. You can just send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org
Okay.
and I'll put you in touch. They've got the ribbon, the giant scissors, whole 9 yards.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have special use permit application number 2023-041. Don't know how to pronounce this. Ladoo Gopal Inc., 1425 Jefferson Road, to operate a restaurant selling ready-made South Asian food with the option to offer sit-down and takeout meal service. Do we have a representative here or online?
I think they're waving online.
Becky, is there someone online?
Yes, we do. I just hit the button they just unmuted.
Yes.
So please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your project.
Yeah, my name is Rima Prabhakar.
And what are you going to do?
Say already on Indian restaurant, Amaya Indian Cuisine in Brighton. So we are looking for another restaurant on the Jefferson second one. For the just sit down and carry out small restaurant, Amaya Snacks and Sweets. So we are looking for that one.
So we're getting a little bit of an echo, so it's been a little difficult to fully understand. Did you say you had a restaurant in Brighton and you're?
Yes, Amaya Indian Cuisine. We have already one Indian restaurant running very good in the Brighton, Amaya Indian Cuisine. So we are looking for another one on the Jefferson, which we submit the application. So Amaya Snacks and Sweets. It's a small restaurant. So we applied application for that one.
So will you be preparing the food at your restaurant in Brighton and then selling the prepared food out of this location?
Yeah, yes.
And how much room for seating are you looking at?
Seating is 10 to 15. It's a very small size of the place. We are just making a takeout, moreover.
More concern is the takeout and little bit is the dining.
Just like 10 to 15 people sitting. There's not more than space for that.
Right, and it looks like your hours of operation are planned to be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day?
Yes.
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 Great. Are you planning on serving alcohol?
No, ma'am.
No.
Do you have an idea when you're looking to open?
As soon as we get the permit and we start
Yes.
putting all equipments and warmers, we can make it fast as soon as possible.
Right.
And we can do the ribbon cutting before the new year.
That'd be great. I don't have any further questions. I don't know if anyone else does. The location, this is Saginaw Plaza, correct?
Yes, sir. 425 Saginaw Plaza, Suite 9.
What do you know what was in there?
It was the CBD store before.
Hempsall moved
Okay.
from one suite to another.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions from the public? And hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-041. Someone wish to make a motion?
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I make a motion to approve special use permit application number 2023-041 for Ledoux Gopal Inc., 1425 Jefferson Road, to operate a restaurant selling ready-made South Asian food with the option to offer sit-down and take-out meal service. Second.
Could you tell us how to pronounce that?
It's a Laddu Gopal. Laddu is the special dish sweets called the Laddu, and Gopal is the name of the Krishna. So it's a little Krishna is called the Laddu Gopal Inc.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any further comment? Hearing none, then please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. As I said to the previous,
Thank you.
Thank you.
our pleasure. As I said to the previous applicant, if you want to send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org, I can hook you up with the Chamber of Commerce, and we can
Please.
get in some announcement of the openings. In fact, we've got a town newsletter coming out soon with some openings. So if you get me some information, we might
Thank
have a little something in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next special use permit, council member Page suggested for those in the audience who are new to the process, a special use permit in a zoning district. So the town is broken up into zoning districts, which basically say that there are allowed uses. There are uses that are allowed with a special use permit, and then there are uses that are not permitted or not allowed. The purpose of a special use permit is sometimes these zoning districts, for instance, some of these retail areas end up next to residential areas. And so for uses that have potential impact on those adjoining properties, we typically, those include a special use permit. So we work with the developer. The goal of a special use permit isn't to deny it, it's to get them to a point where the use can be permitted because they've mitigated all of the potential problems that could affect the neighbors. So that's the purpose of a special use permit. Okay, next up, we have public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-039. Durham Realty LLC, 324 Jefferson Road, to operate a retail cannabis store. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us something about your application?
My name is Paul Veely. I purchased that building on 324 Jefferson Road in July to clean it up and rent it out. Been neglected for a while. And apparently because it's in the permitted district, I've got about 8 tenants interested in a cannabis dispensary for the location.
Okay, have you put together a plan in terms of how you're gonna deal with, so one of the issues right now with the cannabis dispensary, of course, is whereas cannabis is legal under New York state law, it's still illegal under federal law. That creates some issues in terms of banking. And so, a lot of times these cannabis retail places need better security. The other thing we look for, do you have any plans on how you would keep, one of the things when the Office of Cannabis Management was created by the state to deal with this, we had 2 types of retail operations that we could or could not allow in the town. One was the retail adult use dispensary that we did allow. The one we did not allow is the consumption sites.
Right. I saw that in the code.
Right. And part of the issue we saw there is consumption on site and then people driving under the influence. So do you have something in your site plan that you know, to address that potential concern to make, like, do you have external security cameras to make sure that there isn't, there's not activity going on, you know, where people are buying your product, going out to their car, consuming the product, and then heading home under the influence.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna be the operator.
Yeah.
I have external security cameras on the building and I'm very specific in the lease that nothing contrary to, you know, local state laws and codes, because of course I don't want a situation like that either. I'm in favor of a legal place to obtain it, but you know,
Right.
like everybody else, I don't want people driving around like that any more than driving around and drinking.
Right. But you don't exactly have a kind of a site plan drawn up yet.
Well, no, it's on the tenant and the tenant that is, we're actually in serious lease negotiations with now, because apparently Friday is the state deadline. You either have to have a lease or a deed to a property before you can apply for the state license. They are very interested in security measures and things like that. And that will be in their plan because, you know, they'll have to come to you for building permits and whatnot.
I have a question for the attorney. Is it the owner that is applying for a special permit, or should it be the applicant?
No, I was informed that the permit goes with the property, not the
It
tenant. That's
does.
why I'm here, because we already went through this confusion with the building department.
Right.
Yeah,
They
the
told me to put the permit on the property.
the permit does go with the property.
The license will be on the tenant.
Right.
I understand.
Okay.
The problem is that
And-
we don't have a real plan to look at.
Makes it hard to
It Makes
judge.
it hard to evaluate.
Agreed.
You know, one of the things we could take a look at potentially is take a look at the conditions we put on Rise Cannabis, which is the only special use permit we've approved so far today
Right.
for cannabis. And potentially, you know, apply some of those same ones. They're conditions that basically say you're gonna have external security cameras. You know, that you're gonna have a means to essentially secure the building, because like I said, one of the things that, because of that often largely cash basis, there is a greater risk for the potential for crime at the
yeah.
location.
So the tenant that we're working with now, like I said, the most serious tenant is actually, they are working with an attorney out of Buffalo who is 60% of his practice is cannabis. He works with farmers, manufacturers, medical dispensaries, and then he's very familiar with this CAURD, the adult use retail dispensary. So they're very, you know, it's very much in their plans for security, securing the building, securing the product, and
Right.
securing and making sure that, you know, the behavior that's going on is proper too.
The only reason I asked the question is typical in the past, at least, that the owner of the property sends us information that says, I'm allowing this applicant to apply. I own the property. It's okay with me that he opens it up as a retail cannabis. But then we talk to the applicant and we create the conditions for the special
Right.
permit directly with the applicant. That's
And
the reason I asked.
And
the question.
I'm with you because that's where I started.
Right.
And then till the building department says, no, the permit goes on the
Right.
property
So,
and the license will be on the tenant.
yeah, so like I said, whether you're here, it depends, sometimes it's the property owner that speaks, sometimes, but the point is the plan that we have when we're looking at, there's usually an applicant involved. Now, a lot of that stuff, I mean, there would still be a planning board review for site plan potential, or if there normally isn't, we could create that as a condition, correct? That we could create a condition that there has to be a site plan review. Even if it normally wouldn't qualify for one, since it's an existing building and an existing parking lot and that type of stuff.
I guess I'm not sure what you would be reviewing if you condition on a site plan review. Once
The problem is I can't address, so the other issue we have potentially is traffic control, right? I don't know.
Well, maybe they
This
should
was
come
a
back.
former trailer sales place, right?
In the 80s, but since it's been two like medical motor services where they had, you know,
Right,
40,
but my
50,
point is
yeah.
it hasn't been a heavy retail location.
right.
Yeah, so that's the issue, is the use is kind of changing. I don't have any plans that show that there is sufficient, you know, how the parking lot looks, that type of stuff, but that's arguably a site plan review thing. So that's why I was wondering, can we essentially force a site plan review to make sure that they address the concerns of traffic, pedestrian, the stuff that's, you know, that we need to look at.
That would
The
make
problem
sense.
is, you know, does this start to get into conditional?
I just don't know how we can do a special use permit review and we don't really have much before us to review.
Plans?
I don't,
Right, and I think there's things beyond just the parking and the traffic that we would
Right.
have concerns about. You know, just the like noxious fumes and odors and that sort of thing.
So just to be clear, in terms of and I get that there's some risk going on, although, Becky, didn't we receive a, notice of application for this location from a retailer?
We received two different ones for this for this property so far.
Could you just say the two that we've received?
Yes, let me get to that spot in my computer. Give me just a second here.
Yeah, so the thing they can do under OCM, they can apply for what's called a provisional license, which basically says they can get licensed, get approved to actually have a license, but they don't have the final site picked out. And then they can go and pick the site. Now, I don't know the rules well enough to know this deadline you're speaking of. Not sure what that's about. So there may be a deadline that I'm unaware of, but in talking with OCM, because this was one of our concerns, we received 15 applications for licenses in the town of Henrietta, only one of which actually had a site already approved under special use permit.
Right.
And so, you know, we asked them, well, you know, we've got this local zoning. How is that handled? And that's when they explained that what they do is if they don't have an approved, a site approved by the local municipality, they can apply for a provisional license. And then after that, when they get the final location approval, it becomes, they can essentially apply to create a final license. So
Right.
I don't, in terms of the location itself, again, there's not a huge impact that I see from neighboring there. I think there is, I want to see where it is. Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make, there are houses on Town Line Road, but not adjacent to where that is. They're further down off of Lightfoot and Wellsville, so.
Right.
Yeah, so there's no houses, so I don't, and you're not aware of any businesses in the immediate vicinity that cater towards children.
Nothing, no, there's
Yeah,
a pizza
so
place on one side and a bar on the other side.
Clubhouse,
The
Yeah.
The
trampoline.
trampoline place.
that's quite far away.
Right, it is. It's quite a ways down.
Yeah, so I don't see an issue with this location at all. But the problem is without a plan saying, how are we gonna address traffic? How are we gonna address safety? How are we gonna address monitoring the parking lot, that type of stuff? It's awfully hard for us to.
And I understand the circularness of this situation. And the problem is that nobody, like I said, and this attorney from Buffalo seems to be the most educated person I've talked to so far. He said that you cannot get, he didn't even talk about a provisional license. He says you can't get a license without a lease or a deed. So,
Well, I know two people who have done it, so I
okay,
don't
well, I'll
know.
have to ask about that, but,
Yeah.
and that's why,
You can't get the final license. There's no
Right.
question on that.
okay,
But there's this provisional license because, so one of our applicants had a provisional license and then he went and found a location at the Genesee Valley Regional Market. And so he's in the process of converting his provisional license to a full license. I don't know if he's been successful yet to date.
right,
That's the second one because cannabis is under ag and markets law and because he was in a facility operated by the Genesee Valley Regional Market, which is an agricultural
right.
creation. He doesn't need a special use permit. He just needs approval from the market authority, which he has. So,
Gotcha.
to my knowledge, he's going forward with that. The other one is, again, Rise Cannabis. Now, they started as medical, but they came in with their full plan for retail because they didn't want to move their medical operation to this location unless they would be able to get in the special use permit.
Right.
So they did the full thing. That was, what, 2 years ago? So like I said, it's, I understand, but, you know, again, we're not, so one of the things we have to do with these and for ones like the restaurants, which are pretty straightforward, especially if it's a previous restaurant use or at least something similar like the retail. It really doesn't invoke a seeker action or, you know, but in terms of in the reviews, the formal, but one of the things you're not supposed to do under that is a conditional approval, being that, okay, we'll approve it assuming you're going to do this, right?
Right.
You have to essentially give us a plan and then we can say, okay, you've offered that. So we're going to make that a condition so that, in other words, you can't stop doing what you offered. So like I said, if they offer a solution on how to monitor the parking lots, we can make that a condition. And then if they ever stop doing that, we can say, well, you risk losing your special use permit if you don't continue to operate that way.
And I understand. The problem is none of these people are going to do that until they had, you know, they're not going to sign a lease till they know that the town says, okay, you can do this here. And you don't want to say, okay, you can do this here until you see the
Well, we
tenant's plan.
can't. I mean, we have this all the time. We have Shake Shack put together a floor plan before they had approval to move a restaurant in. All these places come in with, you know, businesses. Yes, there is some potential cost up front, although you don't need to hire an architect. It doesn't need to be to that level. I mean, you could do it. You could create something that says, this is what I would look at. This is how I would consider doing it. If somebody then had to deviate from that, you'd have to just come back and update your special use permit. But basically, if whatever they did matched the requirements in your special use permit, they'd be good to go.
Right.
So there are ways to do it. But yeah, like I said, these typically come in with a floor plan, with a means to identify how am I going to, you know, ensure, because I will be honest, we've had problems with some of these shops, obviously not cannabis retail, but shops that CBD oil places, smoke shops who've been selling cannabis to minors. We've even caught them. We had a sheriff deputy going with a 20-year-old cadet, and he was able to make a purchase. Great cool. So we are the plans and how they're going to address those issues is very important. So I think we're going to just have to table this because, again, we don't have enough stuff, and I apologize.
So you can't do a permit conditional on approval of the tenant's plans.
That's the problem. From a seeker standpoint, you're not allowed to do conditional, right?
I think this is a type 2 action under seeker,
It's
but
type 2.
at the end of the day, the town board needs to feel that it has enough to review and make a decision on.
Yeah, because under the considerations, and especially the additional considerations that are listed under the cannabis law codes that we put in place, it's just hard for us to do anything without that.
Okay. So where do I get all that information?
It's in our town code, but
Okay, I mean,
again, send me an email at supervisor@henrietta.org and I'll hook you up with, point you right to it, what you got to put in place. And I'll, again, all the other applications and stuff are public information. So I can just point you to, they're online. I can
Okay.
show you what Rise put in on theirs. You can take a look at it just to get some ideas. Again, it could be done in paint. I don't care. It could be done on, hand drawn on
Right.
something, but you got to lay out what the plans are, where is the front entrance? Are you gonna, like some have talked about, and I don't know what OCM does or doesn't allow, but do you have a drive-through window? Do you have, these are the types of things that we need to understand what the layout is, what the physical security is in place and that type of stuff. Because again, what happens then is when you've offered that, we'll often lock that into the approval because we don't want these to go downhill.
Right. No,
And you as a landowner don't property owner wouldn't want that either, right?
Oh, not at all,
Right,
not at
so-
all.
So we're aligned in that regards, but like I said, unfortunately, we can't just say, okay, you've got a special use permit pending a future approval. We
Yeah.
can't do the approval until we've got that stuff, so I apologize.
Well, and like I said, this is all new to me, and I've
Right.
got tenants telling me we can't go anywhere until you tell us the property is
Yeah,
allowed to do it.
I will say that some of the applicants don't have a full grasp of the rules under OCM. I've seen that as they've come in. Some have a better grasp than others, so.
Right.
The next, so what we will do is we'll table this till the December 6th meeting.
Okay,
Hopefully, if, now, if there is some deadline coming up and I'll reach out, you send me an email, I'll reach out to OCM to see what they have to say and just explain to them that because we didn't have plans from the applicant to see, maybe I don't know if they have a means to extend it. Like I said, I'm not aware of an upcoming deadline. That's not to say there isn't one, because I'm not applying.
no, right, from what I
they've-
understand,
they've-
it's Friday.
They've never mentioned one, let's put
Right.
it that way.
So what's the email that you want me to,
Supervisor
yep,
at henrietta.org.
okay, easy enough.
Okay, and like I said, I'll send you back some of the stuff on the Rise Cannabis, where to find that online and
Right,
look at that and then again, I will send an email. They have a email for municipalities at OCM that whoever they hired to work there has been fabulous. In the early days of this, it was so frustrating because you couldn't get any answers anywhere. Whoever they hired to man that email has been fabulous. Whenever I have questions, they answer them promptly. So, like I said, if you send me an email, I'll let them know what's going on and see if there is a deadline, what it is, and can it be extended because of local approval.
right,
Okay,
good enough.
thank you.
Thank you.
I do have that answer to you on the notification forms received for this property.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a Legacy Smokes and Top Tier Co. And I'll also just note that although we didn't receive a notification form for it, the original applicant for the special use permit application was Cat's Garden. We just haven't received that notification form from them.
Is one of those if you want to talk about that, you don't have to reveal that.
Oh, no, so,
For us, it's public record. So,
yeah, no, so that Cat's Cove, that Catherine Howard,
yep,
she was the one that the building department said, well, you realize that the permit goes with the property, not the
Right.
tenant. So she said, I'll withdraw mine and let the landlord go in. for
Oh,
the
so what,
So that's where this whole circle started.
so she didn't have to withdraw hers. There's a portion on there that says gets the property owner's approval.
Okay.
That's
well,
what she could have done, is just gotten you to sign something that says, yes, I'm the property owner. She's applying for the special use permit, but you're actually the recipient of the special use permit.
Right. And then the problem is what we were talking about with the building department as well. If she doesn't wind up being the tenant, now you've got mixed up paperwork with her name on the permit. So they advised me to come in as the landlord and put it on the property.
Yeah, well, right. So if you're not certain that you were gonna choose, like if she got the permit and you were gonna choose her, that's not an issue.
Right.
If you're gonna get the permit and then choose from one of the multiple people applying, that could be a problematic, which again gets back to, then you ought to put together a drawing, an idea, a plan of what you're looking to do.
Right. And Top Tier is the one actually that's the farthest along in the
Right.
process, so that's where, everybody wants me to hold the property contingent on them getting licensed. So it's hard to put someone's name on it until
Understood.
somebody commits.
And they're welcome to reach out to me too, if they, if you're unable to explain what I explained to you and you need more clarity,
Right.
they're welcome to reach out to me. I can
Okay.
explain it to them. Okay?
All right, perfect. Thanks.
So we are going to table keep the public hearing open for and table this until the December 6th. Yep. Okay, so again, we will keep this public hearing open. We'll close this session for a special use permit application number 2023-039, but keep it open for December 6th. Next up, we have special use permit application number 2023-040 Hemp Soul CBD. 1425 Jefferson Road to operate a retail cannabis store. We have a representative from Hemp Soul.
Good evening, council. My name is Benjamin Wortman. I'm the operations manager. I could probably speak to some of your concerns with security and otherwise pending licensure, if you're interested in that, or if you would like to start.
Now, tell us something about your plans.
Yeah, so we've been a CBD store for 4 years now, serving the community with knowledge and holistic healing. We're hoping to expand into cannabis by applying with New York State. And using our knowledge and our practices already using, cannabinoids are controlled. So we want to expand that knowledge and move forward into cannabis to bring a safe place to purchase cannabis and get proper knowledge so people can have a good experience, and so can the community. And in terms of your guys' security concerns, we have already in our location exterior facing cameras to control parking lot flow. And with licensure, we will be bringing on additional vendors for security as well as cash handling to institutions.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll down and see if you've got there it is. Have you, so one of the things for a cannabis store that's in one of these strip malls, for lack of a better way to describe it, have you had any feedback from the landlord and or the adjacent immediately adjacent suites?
We haven't had any negative feedback from the adjacent suites. The landlord submitted a letter of approval with our intent to move forward with this project. He does know and is involved. So we haven't had any negative feedback from our neighbors.
Steve, if I could add to that, the only feedback we've had is positive from our neighbors since we moved into that plaza. That's the only thing I could add.
May I ask who's speaking?
Jim McKenzie.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, so we've increased the traffic there with what we've been doing. I think it's been a positive experience for the area as well as the co-tenants.
And who are your immediate neighbors there?
We had the boot store originally, Steve, and then we moved down the plaza. So we had Ben, what's their official name?
A salon next door currently, and a ophthalmologist.
Yep, and then the bank at the corner, Steve, as well. We were down there, but the boot store was the one that was planning on moving. We moved out of that one space, and you have that Indian restaurant going in there now. I think they're just going to leave it as is, what we created. So.
And is there anyone to the east of you? It looks like there's a tiny little wedge left of the building, or is that maintenance area?
It's a spa.
Oh, that's the spa?
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's the nail spa. Yeah, the nail salon is to the very right of us, but other than that, to the left of us, you have the oxygen store down a little bit, nail salon to the right of us if you're looking out towards Jefferson. So you got that to the right. You have the I guess they're called a massage place to the left of us. And then as you move down our plaza, it becomes more medically integrated with the oxygen and then the boot store and other. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Those businesses above too.
Those businesses above
Those
as well.
businesses above.
Yeah, I
also.
believe there's an accounting firm upstairs as well as some other businesses.
Correct. A hair replacement in one location and a lot of accounting. Correct.
What are your plans for security?
We have two doors on the premises, so we're going to control traffic flow with one entrance and one exit door. Our floor plan also allows additional space per New York State guidelines for a check-in desk for ID checks, as well as security can be on site as well.
Cameras outside?
We don't have exterior cameras mounted on the building as right now, but we do have interior cameras that do face outside and we can see all the parking spots in front of us.
It's one of the things that we demanded from RISE
Mhm.
is that, as the supervisor mentioned, we don't want any illegal activity taking place outside.
Correct.
You
Well,
don't-
and especially, like I said, people going back to their cars.
No,
smoking up
absolutely.
Or
The-
taking.
Very important for us in our model, Steve, is when we were doing this, is like that parking lot, like who comes into our place. It's so important to us to be able to monitor who comes in and out of our parking lot, because the other businesses that are in our plaza, we want them to thrive as well. Very important to monitor who comes in and out. We've talked with Yilmaz and Uric about external security cameras. They're all for it. We just have to get that approved with them, but we agree 100% that that's very necessary, even to monitor who's around us, which is what we do today.
So are you willing to offer that there'd be an external security camera that, like fisheye or something that had a good view of the parking lot?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
required. Yeah, we
Okay.
can have
That was the basis of
Yilmaz
my
do that.
question, and we would build that into the special permit.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm totally for it.
Yeah, we want as much security as you guys would like and maybe even more because we want to succeed as well.
Okay.
That's interesting. This has got,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, has this been reviewed by the Department of Engineering and Planning and by the Fire Marshal? Because it indicates that the information that's here in our packet is related to the prior application,
Right.
Ladu Gopal.
yeah, it's. Let me just check something here. Becky, when we pull up the one for hemp sol, it has the the restaurant one. They're both the same address, so I don't know if that's.
We should have an updated.
Let me take a look.
Okay.
We now control suites 2, 3, and 4 under our umbrella.
Right.
When I came in and spoke with, I believe, Tracy, she had a building department check and we seem to be all good. We currently have a
Open up
certificate of
the call and just
occupancy.
See if it got switched.
Gotcha. If not, we'd be happy to provide you any paperwork you need.
In the OneDrive? In the
Yeah,
OneDrive, when I open up the SP 2023-040 Hemsol, that's what I'm seeing, the Hemsol one.
No, it's
Yeah.
coming up the restaurant.
right, when you scroll down for the Hemsol and you get to,
The site plan, it,
yeah, to the,
so the application
Reviews.
itself is, but if you scroll down,
The attachments.
Is it under Saginaw perchance?
it is, but then a little bit further down, there's an October. It's weird. It's kind of mixed.
Mm,
So then,
Oh, the comment from Chris.
yeah, the comment
the-
from Kevin,
Yeah, okay, yeah, let me grab that.
Stephen and Chris all look like they apply to,
Right.
the other.
Right, the
and it
restaurant.
looks like that suite. So the suite in here, it doesn't have a suite number, but it's the farthest. Again, it's pretty far to the east. So is that your old location or your new?
This is our new location to the east. Next to
What they're
that
showing
wedge you
you on-
described earlier.
What they're.
I just can't tell.
It used to be
Unfortunately,
the Clicks
map
Photo
from-
Studio.
The map from Fenity Associates. Here, why don't you come look at this?
That is the new location, Steve, because there's parking behind the building and parking in front of the building. So
Correct. Yep.
that is.
Okay,
the
do you have a
correct
floor
space.
plan of any sort?
Not only, but I can provide that absolutely.
Yeah,
Floor layout, not proposed floor layout.
Just looks like the memorandum,
yeah, the
Inter-
memorandum
offices
got
are incorrect.
crossed because they're both, it's the same address as the issue.
Yeah.
So they might have just attached them to both.
Yeah, so what we ended up doing was taking over 3 suites in that plaza. So we took Clicks and then the dry cleaner. So we have our Saginaw distribution on one side and then the retail on the other is how we did it.
Do you have Jim, would you be able to email, so you didn't send in a floor plan?
No, we did. I believe Ben did all that. Yeah, I think you guys have all that because we did have the fire marshal and everybody come out. So Steve, I think that was done. I'm not sure because Ben handled that. But I thought we did put that in, you know.
I don't see it attached to the
No,
special use permit,
you have a site plan, but no floor plan.
right?
Gotcha.
I can
Ben,
provide.
can
that
you
for you.
include that? All right, great.
Well, if you, my
I-
point, if you want a ruling tonight, we need to see that tonight. So what
Gotcha.
we can do is, we
Oh,
can,
yeah.
we can table this right now. We'll go on to other, give you time to get that sent to us and then we'll review that. Okay?
Supervisor, I'd like to see the comments
I
regarding,
I just dropped them into the OneDrive.
okay, they are there.
These are, I just kind of double check them to make sure I got the right ones. Yes, building director,
Comments.
engineering and fire marshal. I'm sorry, I didn't make them fancy. I just dropped them as fast as I could into
see it.
OneDrive.
I see.
What,
And weren't those also submitted from the landlord when construction was happening?
Yeah, so the landlord letter was on there. The problem was the comments were actually, it's not very often you have 2 special use permits with the exact same street address. So
I got
they got cross-pollinated is all.
Okay.
So it looks like it's a similar comments.
I'm sorry, where are the comments to be found?
If you look at 223-040, they all start with that. It's building director comments, county comments, engineering comments. They're just separate files. That's all.
So you guys never received the floor plans? Is that what you're saying? That's what we need to get to ASAP?
It did not come to the town board. So,
Okay, gotcha. All right.
The clerk's office does not have it either.
right, yeah. So if you could
Do
send
you
it,
have those in our files that we can get them immediately, or do we have to table this?
We might have,
well, like I said, if you can get them to us, it's at townclerk@henrietta.org.
yeah, I'd have to contact the Elmas to
Okay.
complete this.
We'll get, we've got a bunch of other special use permits, so we'll just keep this open. If
Sounds
we,
good.
if we don't get it before we're done with the special use permits, then we'll just table it to the December 6th meeting.
All right, well, we
Okay.
might have to do that because I don't believe I'll be able to get those in time.
Yeah.
But, okay,
Okay,
thank you very
are
much.
you aware of any deadline, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So
Yeah,
the deadline, if you have control over a property like we do to apply with New York State, is November 17th. The other deadline is December's, I believe 19th actually, for just general applications if you do not have a location. And then like
Gotcha.
you were saying, you can be provisionally approved pending full licensure, though you do need to have a
Right,
location in
right.
hand, but they
Okay.
give you 12 months to do so.
Gotcha. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
yeah,
you.
we can help with any of that stuff, guys, if you need it. Yep, that's something we know. Yeah.
You've been very responsive of that. I've just not paid attention to deadlines because they don't apply.
Right. Any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, guys, very much.
So again, we'll hold that open. If we should get something before the end of the public hearings, we'll call you back up. Otherwise, we'll table it to the December 6th.
Sounds good. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next up, we have special use permit application number 2023-042, Green Spark Solar. Tobin Henrietta Solar LLC, 55 Tobin Road, to construct and operate a 3 megawatt AC solar energy system through incentive zoning. Now, there's actually a total of 5 special use permits from these same folks, so I'm just we'll just kind of do one presentation covering everything in discussion and we'll go from there. I will just talk about the other one. So at that location, they are applying for incentive zoning to be able to do this. And then they have 2 additional special use permit applications, number 43 and 44. This is for, it's interesting. It's considered East Henrietta Road. Even though the property has no frontage onto East Henrietta Road, we've been referring it internally as Lehigh Valley because the property straddles the Lehigh Valley Trail. The reason there's 2 is one is a 5 megawatt, the other one is a 1.875 megawatt. And as I understand it, they're two separate applications because above 5 megawatts, it's a whole different ballgame and from the utility standpoint. So.
Yep.
And that one also, again, they were looking to do that through incentive zoning. So please introduce yourself, your relationship to the project, and let's get started.
Sure. Thanks so much for having us. Brooke Mayer from Green Spark Solar. I'm joined by my colleague Mia Margillo, and online we have Kevin Schulte and I believe Matt Vanderbrook, as well as our civil engineer, Stephen Malott from Fisher Associates. So we got a whole team here tonight to answer any questions. So as you mentioned, Supervisor, and thank you to all the board members for having us here tonight. Really appreciate the opportunity. We are here on behalf of 3 separate projects, 2 of which are co-located on the same tax parcel. So all told, those 3 projects would be for 9.4 megawatts AC, and would encompass about 46.5 acres in the town of Henrietta. And they are within sort of the quadrant of town south of 90 and east of 390, not too far from one another. Just to go sort of in order of the
Sure.
hearings. So the first project is Tobin Henrietta Solar. This is on tax parcel 190.02.148.21. Sure, you know it well. And the property is owned by landowners Mark and Linda Heinz, who are here tonight. It's in the rural residential zoning district, currently farmed. This would be a 3 megawatt AC ground. And thank you, Becky. I realized we didn't coordinate on advancing the slides, so thank you for following along. The array itself is about a 14-acre footprint in a lot that's 20.5 acres. And then there's an additional access road going back to Tobin Road that's about just over a half acre. Tobin Road is a county road, so we'll need a county permit here. And just to give you the lay of the land, in the south west corner of the site is a DEC wetland, which we're avoiding entirely, as well as the 100-foot adjacent area here. So that's sort of the basics of the array itself. If you could advance the slide, Becky. As the supervisor mentioned, we are pursuing an incentive zoning proposal here. And so we presented at the last town board workshop, not this week, but last month. As the board is well aware, the solar code for the town includes a substantial farmland protection provision, which notes that solar has to be developed on an active farm. And then essentially for every acre of solar developed, we would need to protect via conservation easement 3 times that in farmland conservation. And we do that by recording a conservation easement against that farmland. That did not prove feasible on this site or on the Lehigh South sites. And in conversation with the town, we are exploring the incentive zoning approach here, essentially seeking dimensional relief from the code, specifically the requirement to secure that agricultural conservation easement across the 75% equivalent of the array, in exchange for one of the defined amenities baked into your incentive zoning code. In the case of Tobin Henrietta, we are, our initial proposal was actually a monetary contribution of $50,000 to the town to support the creation, maintenance, and or enhancement of public parkland, trails, and rec facilities. We are open and curious for the boards and the town's feedback around where that might best be allocated, how it would best align with the future land use plan, with the town's development goals, and where the real needs are. So where that gets allocated is an ongoing discussion. Becky, if you could advance to the next slide. So we did want to bring just something new to the table tonight, based on our conversation with the planning board where we were at last night. There was some concern that, you know, the parks, the monetary contribution for the parks wasn't really tied to the spirit of the project. And so here we would also like to explore a different amenity, again, seeking that waiver of dimensional requirements for the ag conservation, but really tying it back to the spirit of the project, and contributing $50,000 of what we'll call clean energy infrastructure to be determined in coordination with the town as to you know, what the most beneficial and appropriate use of it would be. But essentially that would be allowed under the neighborhood upgrade incentive zoning amenity, and we reference the section of the code here. But the idea would be, you know, we would provide an in-kind installation of solar on a town facility of the town's discretion, or install chargers, and would work out, you know, how the town would benefit the most from that investment.
I will
Both
just say, just make a note that while we always appreciate the planning board's input in this regards, it's a town board decision, not a planning board decision.
Absolutely.
And, you know, when I look at some of those things, there are grants out there that, in fact, we didn't pay for some of the ones we've already put in.
Yep.
So it doesn't seem like we're serving the best interests of the town and taking something that we can otherwise get for free through a NYSERDA grant or something like that. So I get where they were going with that, but, you know, again, improvements to the parks. We've got a list. We had just put it together with our Director of Parks and Recreation and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board that had a list of some of the projects, major projects that we were looking to do in the future. And so accelerating some of those and being able to use these funds instead of taxpayer dollars is, you know, helps preserve and expand the park under that amenity that's included. And again, anything we can do to save taxpayer dollars, we are happy to do. So that's where I'm leaning more. I can't speak for the rest of the board, but like I said, it just doesn't seem to me to make sense to use these dollars for stuff that we can get through NYSERDA grants. So.
Yep. Understood.
Part of this.
And Steve, if I,
Go ahead.
This is Kevin with Kevin Schulte, the CEO at Greens Park. One of the thoughts we had when we were discussing this for you today was in exact alignment with what you're saying. Again, if you want to go with the parks, that's your discretion, and we're happy to provide this contribution any way that makes sense to the town. But one of the things that we were thinking was, how can we leverage NYSERDA money and other tax money and everything that's available to the town to make our $50,000 investment really scale, whether it's, you know, again, whether it's charging or solar or whatever. And so as we go through the course of this thought process, we're happy to just sit down and go through some of those ideas just to see if they make some sense, because I do believe there are ways to put some money in the taxpayers' pockets that may be able to also fund some of these other projects because they become regenerative by the nature of the technology. So just some thoughts for you that I'd love to just, you know, continue the goodwill of the conversation to see if they work for you.
Sure. You know, but like one of the things we could potentially take a look at. So let me use one of the projects that I know is on there, right? A permanent band shell. You know, could we do something with the design of that, the layout of the roof, that then puts a solar array on the top of the roof and generates power for the town? Presumably you guys be involved in that, could make revenue off of that, or we make revenue off of that, however that works, you know. But like I said, so there could be some tie-ins, as you say. You know, one of the things we're looking at also doing in our park, but again, we've already got a NYSERDA grant out there for it, is to put the electric charging stations at our parks. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of that stuff's already in the works.
Yep.
But yeah, certainly get creative, as you said.
Yeah, I speak up only only to offer that, these projects make long-term partnerships between companies like ourselves and the town, and we want to do our best on your behalf.
Sounds good.
And I assume that we could approve the special permits for these three based on an agreement between the applicant and the town on which of the most appropriate use of the incentives.
Right, so in the incentive, one of the things when we created this, some towns, how to put it politically, some towns use their incentive zoning kind of as a leverage to get additional money out of developers. We did not want to go that route. We wanted to make it to be real projects, real things that benefit the taxpayers, but we didn't want to see it evolve into a money grab, for lack of a better way to put it. So we don't actually have cash as an option. It has to be a project. Now you don't have to do the whole thing. You could put, X amount of dollars of cash towards that project, but we don't just take cash. Because again, what I've seen that leads to abuse of the system, and we were trying to avoid that when we put the incentive zoning in place. So you won't find as one of the options just cash, whereas a lot of them do that, and that's pretty much all they take is cash. So anyways, let's keep going. One of the things I will note, we can't make a decision today because the 30 days on our lead agency has not completed. So this is information gathering. And part of this is because anytime incentive zoning is involved, it takes multiple hearings, because basically we got to get some ideas, and then you have to come back to us with what I'll say a concrete proposal, and then we can accept it or modify it and go forward. But so right now, this is, for lack of a better way, put it more of a feeling out. And I've also got some comments I'm going to make regarding to your site plan, some issues I have with the site plan. So
Great.
So why don't we stick with Tobin Road, and I'll bring those up right now. So in looking at the site plan, there's a lot of trees being cleared, and I would like you to take a look at how can I reduce the number of trees being cleared. Now, obviously, what I'll call the field row that's between the two crop fields, you don't really have a way to not get rid of those. But if you look at the tree clearing plan, there's I forgot which site that was, but there was a large chunk of trees to the west that basically, it seems to me you've got other open space. Although I guess, I don't know if that's a property line. Is there some way that you can reconfigure your arrays some to reduce the amount of trees that come down?
Yeah, and for anyone that's curious, I do have the tree clearance down here.
That's mostly dead ash now.
Could you come up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can I come up? Hi, Mark Gehring. I'm adjacent to the property. And I totally agree with the tree situation, except that most of those are dying ash.
Okay, so maybe what we should do is identify on the plans which are dead or dying ash trees, because I agree.
To an extent, yeah, that's most of the hedgerow between us is already dead.
Right.
And it's a problem for us. So that area back there, I don't know if you want to talk to it, but that's.
Yeah, well, so one of the things we'll want to talk to you about, because, so obviously one of the things, so you're only our second one. The first application, we did have some challenge with the solar company. It's a different solar company. They wanted to be very aggressive in their tree clearing. And we had to fight them. And unfortunately, the contract they signed with the property owner essentially gives the solar company all the rights. So even though if the property owner didn't want some of these old maple and oak trees cleared, they were like, we're going to clear them. And so,
okay, thanks. I did want to point out that
so
there may be an oak or a
that's
maple
exactly
back
what
in
we
there.
want to know. And so
Right.
one of the things I would encourage you to do, again, supervisor@henrietta.org.
Yeah.
If
I
there are
got it.
trees you want to see as a neighbor, because one of the things in our code we talk about is this needs to be done in a manner that screens it from neighboring properties. So
And
if there is a section that needs to be replanted because it's all dead ash trees, that we can put that as part of the requirement. So, you know, like I said, if you could let me know if there's an area of trees that aren't ash, that are some of the nicer hardwoods and you want to protect those. Yep. So you.
So, yeah, thank
any
you. I just
neighbors-
wanted to bring up, that's actually the only reason I showed up in case.
Yep.
An issue of, does the neighbor care if he sees it? Think I'm the only one who can see it.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you're.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get, well, hold off a second. I just,
Right.
let's continue on and
We
then we're
hijacked,
gonna
I'm
call
sorry.
you guys. Yep. We'll call you guys up. So let's get back to the issues with the site plan. So like I said, that's one of them.
Yep.
Again, I don't care about the dead ash trees, but I care about minimizing impact on some of the, you know, I don't think there's any old growth trees left, but there are trees that are less, I'll call them weed trees, right?
Yep.
Some, you know, like I said, maples, oaks, some of the birch, stuff like that. So I would want to take a look at what trees are out there and which ones we could identify for preservation. And again, on the other project we had, there was a gap in their tree wall for that exact same reason. And they basically planted new trees. Now they picked a species of trees whose maximum height based on its distance was never going to cast shade on the solar panel. So we get it. This is a balancing act.
Yep.
How do I put up privacy while not casting shade on your solar rays?
Yeah.
I will also note out that, you know, one of the things that they wanted is like, okay, within half an hour to an hour of sunset, it was going to cast shadow. Well, you know what? You can live with that, right? If it's just at the very end of the day, if it's an important tree from a screening standpoint. So
Yep.
just so you know where the town sits on that, we are very protective. You know, again, part of this was to preserve space. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you know, when you look at it, the individual who did the last project, they were probably going to have to sell the farm because they just couldn't afford to operate it anymore. The revenue that they get from the solar project does allow them to do that. Now, this is a small property, so it doesn't fall into that, what they did. But, you know, we're going to take a look at, and I will note that we did get comment back from the county, and the county is not happy that farming land is going away. So we're going to have to address that. You know, like I said, that's one of the things when we look at this gets back to why we preserve at the 3-1. Now, I will note that the other location is not, it's not in an agricultural district.
Correct.
It's not been farmed in, I don't know how many decades. So that one's a little different story, but this one is in an ag district. This one is being farmed.
Yep.
So this one is more problematic from that regards, and we're gonna have to take a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for awareness, we are also in the midst of the New York State Ag and Markets review through the notice of intent process. So we send them our plans, let them know that this is underway in the planning process. They assess it from an agricultural district impact perspective and would assess any required mitigation. So you have a partner in that as well.
Right. So, and I will also say, yeah, and we work very closely with Bob King at the county in this regards too. You know, towards some of that, you know, I'm sure you've seen in our code, we do require that it's either pole driven or auger. There can't be concrete or anything like that set in the ground. So the idea is it pulls out, you know, when you're going to need to stabilize it with preferably something that, you know, like an oxygen or nitrogen fixer, clover, something like that, or pollinators, something that's going to help essentially restore some of the soil. And I realize when you look at things on the timelines that it takes to really regenerate the soil, it's something, right? I understand you're not going to completely change the soil, but to again, the big key on that is that what we don't want is as rain comes down, you know, if there isn't crops there, if it's not been proper field cover on it, that we want to make sure that it's not negatively or adversely affecting other farms. That's one of the other things that gets into, we'll want to take a look at, are there drain tiles in this property? And if so, if those are coming out, is that going to adversely affect the adjoining farms? So that's one of the things we're gonna want to take a look at. Because those clay tiles can, like I said, we've seen that where there's been development here and a property or two over, the farm is adversely affected because suddenly either drainage that they were relying on to bring water or drainage that they were relying on to keep their fields from being inundated is now disrupted. So the county commented on your, I hadn't actually taken a look at it just yet on your decommissioning plan, you know, typically we have that we either accept a bond or some have wanted to offer escrow.
Yep.
If it's an escrow, if it's a bond, the bond has to have an escalation clause. If it's escrow, the interest it earns essentially is that escalation. So we're fine with either solution.
Great.
But I didn't read what yours was. They had an issue with it. If it's one of the ones we approve, I'll have that discussion with the county. I'm happy to have that discussion with the county. Again, their comments came in at, I think the final comments came in at like 5 o'clock.
Yep.
So needless to say, I haven't had a chance to review them. I just skimmed through them and saw what some of the stuff they discussed. So.
Great. And we are willing to do what the town needs
Yep.
with regard to the decommissioning plan.
Sounds good. Any other board questions with regards to, we'll focus on Tobin right now. Is there anyone else?
We want to hear resident.
Oh, we
comments
are.
with
That's what I'm
regards
saying.
to Tobin.
Yeah, before we go to the rest of the residents, I would like to hear from, I just want to know if you guys had any more questions.
I don't.
No.
Okay, so why don't you sit at this table? That way you can answer questions if necessary. And the couple here, yep, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Evening, my name is Jim McGowan. My wife Kathy and I own the property. It kind of borders right on the north west corner. No, right down by the 3 line.
Mallow?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, we own right up next to their property there.
Okay.
I just want to clarify a few things. It looks like from reading the site plan, the distance of the fence is 50 feet from the property line. Is that correct?
Correct.
How much clearing is going to be done between that 50 feet and the property line?
There's a mic right in front of you. Oh, you're getting a map. Okay, never mind.
So apologies not to be mic'd up, but this is our tree clearing plan. So
Do me a favor and get close to the mic because we do transcribe minutes, so.
So I'm just, for anyone not in the room, holding up the tree clearing plan. So there is, the most extensive clearing is at the west end of the site, north of the wetland. Thank you. And there is some clearing here, but that is within the limits of disturbance do leave that 50-foot buffer there.
Okay, because my concern is here we have some old growth oaks, which are literally right on the property line almost. And if anything's disturbed or dug up by those roots, they could
Sure.
end up killing those trees.
So again,
So if
if
there's
you,
any excavation done or,
if you could do me a favor, again, send something to supervisor@henrietta.org if you wanna, depending on what your computer expertise is, do a screenshot of Google Earth and just circle in paint or something, or if you want to print it out and circle and bring it in, just get me something that shows which trees you think are important
I
to
probably have
preserve.
to take individual pictures because they're.
Well, I need to know their location on the map is the only
Right.
issue. Yeah,
But I can show you,
that'd be
based on,
great.
it's just been resurveyed, so it shows where the
Oh,
property
perfect.
corner is.
That's perfect, because like I said, we do want to understand that,
Mhm.
because let's face it, you guys know your properties better than we ever could, so.
Yeah.
The other question I had, is this going to be regraded in any way, the site plan? And is that going to raise it up and cause runoff into our property and the adjacent property?
Great question. And before I answer that question, I did just want to note, we'd also love to come out to the property and walk that tree line with you to
Mhm.
identify those
Certainly.
trees. So we'll exchange information after this as well.
Okay.
So with regard to the grading, we're still in the process of specifying which racking we're going to use on this site. And the racking is simply, the infrastructure that holds up the solar panels.
Mhm.
Depending on the racking, different racking manufacturers have different tolerances for grading. I don't believe we anticipate doing any very significant grading on this site. And Steve on the line from Fisher, I will invite you to jump in with any additional comments. But the intent would be to do as little grading as possible within the tolerances of the racking system.
Mhm.
I will say that a requirement from the site plan will be that they do not increase runoff. In fact, usually we require that they decrease runoff to adjoining properties. So that, like, if they're gonna do grading, they would have to do a swell that, maybe takes it to the wetland, for instance, or something like that.
Yep.
Or wherever it makes sense to go. Sometimes, now again, because they're not adding impervious surfaces here, if they were adding impervious surfaces, we would require them to put in a catch pond, that type of stuff. But
Yep. And the stormwater pollution prevention plan does take into consideration a lot of that erosion and stormwater treatment here to ensure that we're not, contributing runoff to your property.
Another question, speaking of the fence, it looks like from what I read that other than the corner posts, all the other posts are just going to be driven into undisturbed ground. So is that going to minimize digging, et cetera?
I'm sorry, other than the corner posts, they'll
The
just,
regular posts of the fence
Yep.
look like they're being driven into undisturbed ground, not
Yep.
dug, concreted, gravelled,
Correct.
whatever.
And in fact, when we met with the conservation board last week, they asked that we spec a slightly different fence that would actually allow clearance underneath for small mammals to get
Okay.
through, which is perfectly fine by us. So we're going to probably be revising that detail.
Is it still going to be 7 foot?
It will still be 7 feet
7
high.
foot high?
Yep.
Okay. And what is the height of the solar panels once they're installed?
By code, they cannot exceed 20 feet. We are significantly below that. I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
And these are the ones that do tilt as the
Correct.
sun, to follow the sun.
Yes, so these are on what's called a tracker system. So the racking is installed on a north-south axis, and then the panels track the sun throughout the day. So they move very, very slowly to ensure that they're capturing as much sunlight as possible.
Okay. All right, I think that's it. What else do you have on?
Please don't ask from the back. They can't hear it on the, all right.
Good question. Does it produce any kind of noise?
Great question. So the only noise producing components of the system, and when I say noise, it's a very minimal hum. It measures around 60 decibels, 60 to 65 decibels. So that's the inverters, which convert DC power to usable AC power. The transformers, and then the motors that actually move the tracking system. So those are really the only sound producing components. And so when we measure those at the actual piece of equipment or within 3 feet of it, that's where we're measuring about 60 to 65 decibels. That's roughly the equivalent of normal conversational tone. So it's as if someone was having a conversation on that part of the property. And all of that equipment, so the motors there's kind of like a motor for every, I think it's 30 rows roughly, so there aren't that many. But otherwise, the equipment is really concentrated on the equipment pad which I'm going to come over and show you briefly
Yeah,
where that
that
is.
would be here.
Yep, exactly. So that's right off the access road for easy access for maintenance.
Oh, that's what I thought. Right, okay. Well, away from us. Yeah, okay.
So if you're interested, having been out to the solar farm on the Ramelt property, basically as the tracking changes, it sounds like creaking. They all move and creak. If you get near the transformers, you do hear a hum. If you're interested, you again, send me an email at supervisor@henrietta.org and I will reach out to the farmer, Charlie Ramelt, and see if he'd be willing to meet you out there. So if you want to hear it in person.
Okay.
So,
And we'd love to join for that, just to
Yeah.
hear any concerns you might have.
yeah.
And just going back to the panel height, so at maximum tilt, it would be, and again, it depends on the grading and the racking system, but at maximum, it would be 20 feet. We have the detail here if you want to look at it. And part of that is we want to adhere to the code in terms of clearance under the panels, again, to allow small mammals and we basically let the sort of meadow landscape that we recreate. We're introducing pollinator species planting mix here to grow up until the leading edge. So until it becomes a shading issue, we'll let it grow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since I'm not familiar with this at all, does it have any impact on wildlife at all?
Great question. So especially relative to other types of development, it's a very light touch on the local environment. Certainly we put up that 7-foot fence, so it does keep large mammals out, namely deer. We are keeping a vegetated buffer around the entirety of the site. So there will be, passage around and through the site. As you're well aware, you can't keep deer out very easily. In terms of endangered or threatened species, so we consult very closely throughout project development with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife. That's part of this 30-day seeker review. And so we've done initial consultations with both agencies, and they have, from a U.S. Fish and Wildlife perspective, issued a determination that it would have no impact on threatened or endangered species here. The two species that we really look out for a lot are the northern long-eared bat, which has, at certain times of year, it's breeding, and then the monarch butterfly. And so from the monarch butterfly perspective, we are actually reintroducing a pollinator planting mix here. So we would hope to create habitat for the monarchs. And then from the long-eared bat perspective, U.S. Fish and Wildlife issued a determination that it would not have any impact. But from that perspective, it's really just about timing construction so that you're not impacting on the breeding season. But we'd anticipate any additional comments back from DEC and U.S. Fish and Wildlife by the end of the month. And we'll respond accordingly. Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Linda Heinz. I'm one of the owners of the land. I want to thank Mark for pointing out that the trees were dying, but I also want to point out that his property is on the total other side of our house. It's not even anywhere near where the trees are coming out. Also, we can speak to, there are no tiles in this land.
Okay, great. Thank you.
At all. There's no drainage tiles.
Good.
We also wanted to let you know, we have the DEC has given us nuisance permits for hunting deer and coyote because those are the large mammals that we have out there. So we have people that are friends that are able to hunt with their nuisance permits to keep the coyote and the deer down. So they wouldn't really be eating any. Hopefully it would help keep down them eating a lot of the vegetation. The coyote won't, but the deer will.
Right.
I think that was, is there anything else you want?
Are there any trees in the area that
No, they're
Yeah.
all dead and dying. That's why my biggest question with them concerning the lease we've been talking about is if a tree falls, because they always are falling out there
Right.
and does damage, who's responsible to pay for the damage? Because those trees go down all the time.
Right.
And basically, I know this map is tough to look at, but whatever clear land you see, we don't own that. That is owned by New York State. It was part of the pipeline company that went down the thruway. They bought our wetlands there in the back, and they bought some of that open land. So there really isn't more open land other than what they've already laid out here. They pretty much used all the open land that we have. I know the one they left that open, but again, our property only goes so far on
Right.
that bottom.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was mostly concerned about trees in
Right.
terms of
Right,
if
but
there's,
like both
right.
these trees are the dead, trash trees, as my husband
Right.
calls them. There's not a
I call
whole
them
lot
dead
of,
trees,
there's
yeah.
not, I know, so do I, but they're just
Yep.
falling and dying
Understood.
and.
Like I said,
Yeah.
not knowing the property, I just wanted to make it clear that when I don't want to see them getting, this did happen at the other, that they kind of went overboard and were looking to target some trees that should have been saved. Oh, and some we were
Right.
able to get them saved, but others came down that shouldn't have come down.
Right, right.
In my opinion. So like I said, I just want to be clear, we're going to be paying more attention to that up front because we want to preserve the better trees.
Right.
Well, it does sound like Supervisor that, while we definitely want to make sure that we preserve any quality hardwoods, if there are dead and dying
absolutely.
ash to take down, I think it would be appreciated by the neighbors to just go ahead and remove,
Right.
remove those things and.
Agreed.
Right.
Yep. Agreed. Like I said, we had the same opinion in the last place that
Mhm.
wherever the weed, and it wasn't even just the dead and dying, there's
Scrub trees.
yeah.
That's what they are.
The aspen or,
Last scrub tree.
I can't think what they're called, but the ones that basically they shoot up roots and they grow, they fall over and a new one grows in its place, the trees you couldn't kill if you tried. Yeah. So, okay.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
think certainly, we're interested in replacing tree canopy on site to the extent possible and maybe improving the structural integrity. So.
And one of the things is our conservation board does have a good list of, because one of the problems that happened is a lot of the areas went monoculture.
Right.
And so when you have something like the emerald ash borer, suddenly large areas are cleared. Now, again, some of those have to do with, it's not surprising there's a bunch of ash around there because it's wetlands, right? Ash do really well in wetlands. But we've been trying to avoid when people replace the trees to avoid monocultures. So go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So the only other question I had, Mark again. I was wondering if either one of you could talk about the agricultural offset that you couldn't do. And then the funds that they offered the town instead. I'm just curious what that is because I don't know what that offset concept means.
Yeah.
And is it farmland existing that you would have to be doing this to, or is it undeveloped?
So
land
I
title?
can answer that. So what
Thank
the offset they're typically talking about, so again, I'll use the Remote farm as an example, 100-acre, little over 100-acre farm. They did 25 acres of solar. They put a agricultural conservation easement on the rest of the farm, so it can not be developed. So the problem is finding property owners willing to do
That's
that.
what I was gonna ask, exactly. Where's the benefit for anyone for that?
The benefit for anyone whom?
Anyone at all for
Well,
that?
so one of the things that was identified in the comprehensive land use plan update, I think it was of 2011, is that the town was very much interested in preserving its
Right.
farmland.
Yeah.
So that's why this was part of the farmland preservation. So New York Ag and Markets, I think it is, or maybe it's just, I'm not sure which portion of New York, but they do offer grants to preserve farms. And the
Okay.
Genesee Land Trust has gone out and get those, but they're hard to get. So we were looking at other ways we could do this. And so again, for the farmer typically who does this, they're getting income from the rent from the solar company,
Right.
And that's what's allowing them to keep their farms going. And in exchange, now again, what a agricultural easement means is you can still farm it. You can put up
That's all that
silos, you can
means,
put up
right? It's
barns.
basically now it stays
Stays
the way the
farmland.
country is now. Is what we're
Exactly.
looking for? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I was just, didn't know what that meant by an
Yeah.
easement. I hear that word and I'm like, wait a minute.
So, but you know, the thing I point out, and Bruce has heard me say this many times, is the way you can tell the difference between somebody who is interested in farmland protection and open land protection is greenhouses, right? Greenhouses are absolutely agriculture. They are structures and take away open space. I will be crystal clear, this is agriculture.
Right.
So if somebody wanted to, you know, on the preserved land, if they wanted to put up greenhouses, they could. If they wanted to put up silos, barns, et cetera,
Agriculture,
they
okay.
couldn't put up a hardy barn
Right.
and have the
Understood.
fence at it, because that's not agriculture.
Okay,
So,
yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
bet.
I just needed that explained.
sure. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Bob Simons. Just two quick questions. Now, there's going to be an access road off of Tobin Road. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Will there be a gate on that?
Not until you hit the fence line of the array.
And also just, we had just had discussions today I was involved with and, what was not, we had discussed possibly putting on at the end of the road.
I'm sorry.
You gotta be closer to the microphone.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I was just letting him know that we did have conversations earlier today with Mark and Linda about putting some sort of fence at the end of the road. We do know that sometimes, you know, kids are gonna be kids, so trying to keep that situation at bay is was
It's
a
one of the
priority.
questions that my neighbor had.
Yep, absolutely.
The other question is, how does this power get from the solar panels towards Golem? Are there going to be towers? Or is there going to be underground or what?
Great question. So we are interconnecting to the Rochester Gas and Electric utility grid here. And we've gone through an interconnection application process with RG&E. And so we've mapped out what's called the point of interconnection right up at Tobin Road. So what happens is the utility constructs a couple of poles along that access road. And then we construct, and then we install a couple of customer owner poles to bring that line in.
Are these poles going to be the same height as the other normal poles or are they going
Correct.
to be the?
Yep. They're
not gonna be
regular.
The big tall poles?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And this is like a 3-phase power. The way that is the easiest way to recognize 3-phase power is you look up at that telephone pole, and if there are 3 wires there, that's 3-phase power. So that's really the heaviest infrastructure we're looking at here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
As
absolutely.
somebody who was in that industry, I will say, call them utility poles. The electric companies get mad when you call them telephone
No.
poles, because no telephone company owns
Sure.
poles anymore.
Exactly. And Kevin, anything that I overlooked in describing that interconnection?
No, I think you got it.
Great.
Coming up.
Hello, I'm Marcia Dinsmore. I reside at 31 Tobin Road. This big piece of property. So our property abuts this proposed farm. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband who can't be here today due to work. First thing I'd like to point out that on page 12 of your document, the SP 2023-042, we are not listed as landowners within 500 feet of this project, although our property lines run quite a ways, you know, adjacent for a huge hedgerow. Also listed is Lucille Newman on 30 Tobin Road, who has been deceased since 2016. So obviously she can't come here to speak. And the other owner whose land abuts his property is 39 Tobin Road. I believe that's owned by Dave West. They're a smaller property. Right. Yep. So some of your things on your paperwork are wrong. So I just have a bunch of speaking points that I'd like to cover. So 8 years ago, we built this house on this property because it was zoned an RR2 for agriculture, and that any housing built south of the thruway would need 5-acre increments which would exclude any housing developments being built behind us. That was a big point of what we were looking for. We wanted a big piece of property, nice and quiet, nobody bothering us. At that time, we didn't consider any other infrastructures. I'm not an expert on solar farms, so my my speaking points may not be valid, but they're important to me. So number one, we spend a lot of our time in our backyard, and our backyard is going to look at this farm. What's not listed here is there's huge.
Could you do me a favor just to make it clear? So solar is not farming, so just call it solar array, because
Okay.
when you say farm, my brain is jumping to the farmland, so it's an array.
Okay.
Okay,
So our yard, there's a huge gap here of trees.
Could we use the cordless mic?
So there's a huge gap in between these properties. So when I'm looking, I can see where this field is every day. The back of my house is all windows, so I can look at all the wildlife, all the trees, the farming that happens in my backyard. And this would just be unsightly, and I don't want to sit there and look at it. The other thing is sound. I know everyone says, oh, these are quiet, but my husband actually spoke with Charlie Remote, who owns that large solar farm on East River Road, and he states that he lives a mile away and can hear these all the time, and they are noisy. I like to have my windows open often, even in the winter. I don't want to hear the whining. I don't want to hear the fans. I'm not in support of any of this.
I'm not sure that that's accurate, that Charlie lives a mile away.
I don't know. This is what he told my husband. I'm just saying, he said that he can hear them and they're
My point
noisy.
is, it's on his farm, it's he's immediately adjacent, and they're not set as far back as these ones. So I'm, let's see, I see west. I'm just, what's your street address? That'll be
31 Tobin.
31 Tobin, okay. I did speak to your husband previously, but I
Yes.
just,
I'm aware of that.
I just have trouble remembering which exactly one is your house. Okay, I see it.
So we take advantage of the agricultural tax exemption. So we own 24 acres. Over 15 of that is being farmed, leased to Willard Farms, Mark Krieger, so that we can take advantage of that. And I know that this proposed site has been farmed up until this year, and they were going to plant winter wheat 2 weeks ago as they planted on our property, but we're told not to. I grew up on a small family farm, vegetables. And I just don't understand how we're taking fertile farmland that's being used to put up solar panels. I just don't understand that.
So I can explain that, because again, as we do this preservation, the purpose of this, we've seen countless farms sold to developers to put up houses, urban tracts, a ton of impervious surface.
Right.
And so the problem is today, so Henrietta only has small farms. There's I think one farm that's over 100 acres. And it's 200 acres. And so they can't compete with the large mechanized farms, even just the farms down in Avon. In fact, like I said, I know a number of farming families from Henrietta who have essentially moved their operation south because you just can't get enough land. And also, this gets into soils, stuff that I understand conceptually, but I certainly don't have a grasp of it. But I get when they tell me the soil here is good and the soil here is not good, right? So in looking at that, the question then comes in, would you rather see them all eventually turn to houses?
But they can't.
Oh, they can.
Well, so anything south of the thruway is supposed to
I'm
be,
fully aware of it, believe me. So I'll use an example, Ward Hill Road, Forest View, that was done through that's in the rural residential. He built 47 houses. To do that, he donated land for a park and he paid his neighbor for a conservation easement, agricultural easement on his farm. You can do it. You know, so there are ways to do it, and we've seen it happen. And again, south of the thruway is dotted with these communities that were once farms.
I know.
And even
It's-
after the change.
past 6 years I've seen it
Right,
happen.
even after the rural residential, so it can still happen. So we were again looking for ways, this was back in 2018 when I first took office and Rick was on the board with me at the time. And we basically looked for ways to help these farms stay alive. And solar arrays are one of them. Now, this one is unusual because again, it's typically, we require these on a working farm and that they preserve the rest of the farm. They can do up to 25% of their acreage, that type of stuff. This project is looking to do it through incentive zoning. And again, as I've stated earlier, we haven't finished the incentive zoning. That's got a ways to go yet. But we're gonna have to figure out some way to preserve, because that's the purpose of this whole thing, right? So the project that's not on farmland, hasn't been farmed in years, that type of stuff, that's one thing. This one's a little trickier because this is active farmland. So if we're gonna be taking active farmland out, I wanna look at where can we preserve some farmland? So.
Good question.
Right.
I mean, you know, so you're gonna offer the town $50,000. What does that do for me? I have to sit here and look at this, I have to hear this. What's the environmental impact? 25 years from now, you go out of business, they don't work anymore. They're done in
So
25 years.
that's what the decommissioning bond is. So if so first off, there's people who are afraid that, are they gonna contaminate the soil? A working solar panel does not. If they're left to rot, they could.
Right.
But two things, if they're currently operating, they're gonna see a decline in the output and they're gonna replace the defective panel. If they've stopped operating, that's when the decommissioning bond kicks in. And if they've gone out of business, that money, that's what we use that money for, to decommission and pull them all out. So the code takes care of that. They can't leave it. We understand that. But you know, the thing I'll say is when you guys built your house, did you pay your neighbors? Now they have to look at your house. You know, property owners have rights to develop their properties within the zoning rules. So, and they're not required to compensate. When I built my house, I didn't pay either of the neighbors who now have to look at my house and my barn and my place that's, you know, it used to be open field. It's still 80% open field, but there's now a big house in the middle. So that happens. I get it. And you know, but one of the things I will say is if there is a gap, they will be required to fill that with trees, because that is a requirement in the code that it has to be screened from neighboring properties. So now, can a neighbor waive that? Yes. You sound like you don't want to waive that, so they will have to close that off so that you're seeing trees, not solar panels.
And I'll just add that on the northern property line there, that really is an ideal place as far as tree replacement on site, replacing the tree canopy, because it would not have drastic shading impacts being on the north side of the array.
Right.
Well, another thing that this is gonna impact is hunting. I mean, we hunt our property, we have friends who hunt our property. You're putting a fence around all of this where there's deer coming in and out constantly. And, you know, getting rid of some forestry. I know it sounds like it's not a lot, but I don't know. I think this is gonna leave a huge impact on that. And there's a lot of wildlife back there. There's turkeys, coyotes, fox, everything. I know everyone thinks some of this is a nuisance, but where are these animals gonna go? We're blocking off areas where every day I look out and they're there. And then, you know, the last thing is, how is this gonna affect our property values in the future? I mean, who wants to live next to a solar farm? Do you live next to one? Do you want to?
Sure, yeah.
Of course you do. So
Yeah,
I'm just,
so,
how's this gonna
from-
affect it 25 years from now? I have little kids.
right. So I will say from a study standpoint, I've yet to see a study that shows that property values drop when there's a solar array nearby. I've not seen any data, you know, I hear that,
But we don't know. So the first solar farm was built 40 years ago.
right, you
I
don't
mean,
think,
I'm sure properties have come and gone since then, but I'm just making my points.
sure,
And this is what this meeting is for.
Yep.
I
thank you.
don't know. I just wanted
So
to
again, if,
give my 2 cents.
And
so again, just to be clear, in terms of that, the gap area, if there's a gap area, they will be required to fill that. We will put that as a condition on their special use permit if it's granted.
Okay.
And we really appreciate your comments. We want to be good neighbors. We are here for, 25, 35.
Okay,
And we are certainly willing to revisit what type of fence might build that partnership. But thanks for your comments. We appreciate it.
are there other residents who wish to speak on this project? If not, let's move on to the other location, which would be special use permits 43 and 44.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Becky. You're on it. So these properties, these arrays, we are referring to as Lehigh South Solar 1 and 2. It's 2 separate arrays. The first, first let me get the lay of the land. So this is on a tax parcel owned by Lairwood Estates. It is just south of the thruway. It's actually a landlocked parcel. And so for the access road, we are working with our neighboring properties, our neighboring property to the west, the Masonic Care Community, which is actively in the process of advancing plans for a senior living community. I believe it's about 200 units. They have committed to working with us in good faith to convey an easement to us to facilitate that access road. And we're working with them to just refine the design of that access road. But the intent would be access from Middle Road across the Lehigh Valley Trail, which I'll touch on in just a minute, through the western portion of this lot. So this property is unique in that it flanks the Lehigh Valley Trail, which is actually Monroe County property. There's about 15.5 acres west of the trail, and then another 55 acres east of the trail. And we're building exclusively, with the exception of the access road, on the eastern portion. And it'll be 2 arrays. The first array is about 5 megawatts. That's approximately 12,000 solar panels and 24.5 acres. And then the second array is slightly smaller, just under 1.5 megawatts. And that's about 3,000 panels. All told, the array footprint is about 32 acres, and then that access road, so inclusive of the portion on the Lairwood Estates property and the portion on the Masonic Hall property, is about 1.3 acres. And the reason that we are separating these 2 arrays is, as the supervisor alluded to earlier, the Public Service Commission in New York State sort of regulates the size of community solar arrays, the tariff for these programs, how they're compensated from the utility really caps out at 5 megawatts. And so this is sort of a standard practice for a lot of solar developers of co-locating to build certain economies of scale. But we need to demonstrate that they're operationally independent. So they will function as 2 separate assets, 2 separate arrays, two different points of interconnection back to the utility grid. So Becky, if you could advance the slide. We might be a little frozen. Oh, thank you. So this is just zooming out, looking at the whole parcel. Yep, if you could advance it one more. Thanks, Becky. So as the supervisor mentioned, this is not an active farm. It has been undeveloped for a number of years. And because we're not an active farm here, we don't meet the letter of the solar code with regard to building solar on an active farm. But there's also a benefit there that we're not displacing active agricultural use. So in lieu of the farmland preservation component here, we are pursuing an incentive zoning permit. And we've put a couple of different alternatives on the table for discussion with this board and with the town. So the first is really, as a component of the project, obviously we need an access road from Middle Road. We need to be able to get to the array. But we really build that as a gravel, permeable, entirely permeable road, not designed for heavy everyday vehicular use. One option would be to just bring that up to a sturdier build for everyday use. We've known from the get-go that the town is interested in facilitating public access to the Lehigh Valley Trail here. Thank you, Becky, for following along. Appreciate it. And so this would improve that vehicular access to the trail. Option two, probably slightly more exciting. Becky, if you could just advance to the next slide, would actually be that Lairwood Estates, as the project owner, would deed about a 5-acre parcel to the town to facilitate the construction of a formal trailhead here. And so the public would have free access via Middle Road, via the access road that we're building, to a parking lot and trailhead facility for access to the Lehigh Valley Trail here. And then thirdly, thank you, Becky, would really be to kind of open up that 15.5-acre parcel west of the Lehigh Valley Trail for public access. So this would entail sort of building pedestrian nature trails, for additional and increased access to the Lehigh Valley Trail, and really kind of formalizing it as a public asset. And that would not be deeded to the town necessarily, but the landowners would convey a public access easement. That's the intent there. So those are really the options that we've packaged so far.
Sure. Touching on those, I'll just say, so we've been talking to the Masons about the possibility of this road for some time. However, at that time, there was the possibility that this was going to be a significant park through, the open space type stuff, as the way it turns out, because this was, if you don't know the history of this, it was originally a golf course that straddled the thruway. It uses the tunnel that was the old Lehigh Valley Railroad tunnel under the thruway to connect the two. They developed the golf course, and then in the process went bankrupt, or it basically just died. On the north side of the thruway, a developer is coming in and putting in homes for the last section of the Wedgewood development, although it's being called Lehigh Ridge. But Authors and Nevins, if you look at them, they both just stop because they originally were supposed to connect. And that section of that development was never put in. And so this is finally completing it. But there was enough open space there from it's cluster development under New York State law. And then basically, so that ended up being the land that is being considered as open space under clustering. I don't know that the trailhead is as valuable as it once was if it's just a trailhead. We do have a, you know, we have some interest in that. Like I said, it was really more of a trailhead park that the interest we had in that. But like, as I mentioned, the aforementioned Forest View with a new trail there, that there's going to be trailhead parking there. That's going to become a new county park, and they're going to be putting in that trailhead parking.
Right.
And not too far to the north of there, people can actually park in our DPW building, and the Lehigh Valley Trail goes right past there. In between the two, there's not great access. But no, with that said, if you guys build the road and you don't want to have to pay the taxes on that road and want to turn it into a public road, I would certainly be okay with that. Although, you know, I don't know that that's as attractive on this particular project. I don't know how other board members feel. That's just where I stand. That you know, when we were originally talking about this, we were looking, I mean, there was even some talk about that there would be a, you know, like a BMX type trail or you know, skate park or something along those lines. Although I don't want to say those too loud because my finance director will probably say, don't let the insurance people even hear you say those words. But you know, that's what some of the stuff we were having discussion. So, you know, with it just being trailhead, with the amount of road you would have to put in and pavement you'd have to put in, I don't know that that's the best use of your funds for the town.
Got it.
I'd want to see that some potentially elsewhere. I do know that, you know, as far as that, you know, in terms of there's interest from the senior development community that's going to potentially do something with that, you know, it might make more sense to do something with them rather than the town. Again, I'm not shutting it down. I'm just saying, it just seems to me that there might be a project better spent than, I don't know how long that road is, but it's not short. And
Yeah.
Roads, you know, roads that meet town standards are not cheap to build. So it just seems to me that I don't know that that's the best use of your funds from a incentive zoning standpoint. Where do other folks agree, disagree? I don't know. Yeah, you might not have had enough time to. I've been looking at this for years, so.
I would have to see what the other options are before
Yeah.
I could make a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to say that, you know, the intention of what we're looking at with the solar arrays is protecting either agricultural land or open space. You know, while the incentives for developing an area or something like that can be appealing in a lot of ways, I really would like to see some sort of something that lends itself more towards preservation.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple things that, you know, in terms of, I mean, just to give people an idea of the scale, right? Genesee Land Trust was able to get $1.6 million to preserve the property rights for the Van Voorhees 201 acre farm. That's about $8,000 an acre. It's so, let's be blunt, they're not going to be able to come up with $1.6 million, right? Not that this is 200 acres, but the point is that this gets into, like I said, from the agricultural, I completely agree with you. In this, I'm not as concerned on the agricultural. I'm looking at more from it specifically says open space and or park development. So I would be fine with park development. You know, in terms of preserving other open space, we could take a look at that. I'm just not sure where that would be. That's, you know,
Yeah.
this particular land, I look at it that it's actually not a bad place for the solar array because, you know, going back to the sounds you'll hear, you're not gonna hear them over the roar of the throughway.
Yeah. for sure.
So, you know, this one really does make sense for that particular use. Now, one of the things we'll want to make sure is that the panels should be facing south, the throughways to the north, so there shouldn't be a lot of reflective glare towards the throughway, but that's one of the things I'm sure we're gonna have to, you know, as we get to this, that'll be one of the conditions, that it doesn't create reflective glare for drivers, but because they're gonna be aimed south they're south of the throughway, that shouldn't be an issue, but
And just to confirm, we are pursuing trackers here as well, so they'll actually face east-west on a north-south axis.
right, but
They are coated with anti-reflective.
sure, but my point is, yes, they tilt this way, but the sun is never straight up, right? So the permanent axis tilt is probably 43 degrees or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
maybe more, but because of where we sit at lines of latitude,
Right.
right? So they will always be tilted. Again, they could be rocked towards, but they'll still be tilted to the south because that's where the sun is.
Yep.
Right? You know, as someone who, that's what I made my career at. The amount of sunlight that hits the earth on a per square inch in the winter time because of that degrees of latitude, it's 1/4 the amount of sunlight that hits in the summertime. It's significantly different from an insulation standpoint. So if you lose that angle, obviously, I mean, you guys know this, but if
Yeah.
you lose that angle, you're losing a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So, so anyway. So like I said, this one makes sense. I think, you know, what we might have to take a look at is that maybe this one, we do the parks and that we try to figure out some way to preserve farmland for the other.
Yeah. I think we are very interested in exploring that possibility and applaud the town on this effort to balance agriculture and solar. I think one challenge that we have run into in going the incentive zoning route as opposed to the solar code. So the way that we interpreted the solar code was that the ag conservation easement would have to be for the lifetime of the project, so 25 to 35 years. That's how the Ramel easement reads. Whereas if we were to pursue that for incentive zoning, it would be in perpetuity. And that's a much different ask
Sure.
to a farmland owner to tie up their options forever versus just for the next generation.
So we'll have some internal discussions regarding that to see what can and can't be done. But yeah, like
Great.
I said, I just have a problem taking away agriculture and not preserving somewhere else in town because that was the original intent of the project. Now, again, it was also, we've always talked about increasing this. So like one of the things we're talking about modifying the solar codes today, because one of the other places we were looking at, and I'll use someone who's, I know they're interested, Hillside Children's. So if they have large acreage, I guess for nonprofits to be able to utilize their land again to help them survive, so they're not so dependent on, you know, for the Hillside case, they're not so dependent on donations, and that for the school district, they wouldn't be as dependent on taxpayer, right? So obviously, if the school district has land they're not using and they can put in a solar array and reduce the tax levy they put out to the property owners, I don't know why somebody would be against that, other than NIMBY, not in my backyard. But you know, like I said, so we are already talking about potentially modifying the code. We could take a look at that as to whether it makes sense with regards to solar arrays, that we have the incentive match what is in the solar code. But like I said, we're gonna have to have some discussion on that. In terms of, you know, how much is being obviated. So.
Thank you. And we're interested in continuing to have that conversation with you if
Okay.
there's an opportunity. Sorry, go ahead.
Is it that? Okay. Right this moment, or can we hear a few more comments? Okay. Sure. No, understood. Okay, as this gentleman stood up, let's hear his comment, and then we're gonna need to take a slight break because won't go into why.
Bob Toby. I own 41 acres directly south of the property you're talking about. My one question is, you have to cross Red Creek.
Correct.
Who will be responsible cleaning the head walls if trees and stuff like that fall over, and is any backup directly affects what happens on my limit?
Great question. So I think let's just pull up the plans. So just for context, in the process of coordinating with the Masonic Hall care community, we're looking at how to really minimize any culvert that would need to, there's really no way of avoiding a culvert here for the creek crossing, but how we minimize the impact there to the greatest extent possible. So any narrowing, any impacts downstream. I think, you know, if there is debris within the creek, that will sort of get worked out in our lease agreement with the landowner. But we are certainly cognizant of those impacts. And so glad to have that registered here tonight. And I don't have a firm answer in terms of whose responsibility that will be, but obviously if it's impacting our operation, that's something that we would need to get sorted out ASAP. And I think we'll certainly work into the agreement who's responsible.
Okay, because there's designated wetlands in there too, I see.
Yep.
So
Yes.
you gotta read all that too.
So we have completed wetland delineation as part of the project development. We're looking to avoid impact to wetlands. So you'll see that right now we're proposing to cut through a wetland at the south end of the property. We're revisiting that as we're discussing with Masonic Hall where the best point to cross that property line is.
Yeah.
But the intent is really to minimize impact. Red Creek is, DEC has identified it as potential habitat for an endangered mussel. And so as we go through the seeker review process, we fully anticipate that they're going to have comments around sensitivities there and any permitting requirements, but we would anticipate that we'd need a permit for that crossing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bob, I will say that I'm sure our drainage crews would be on top of it, and if there was an emergency need, they would clear it and then potentially send the bill to the landowners or whatever, you know, is necessary, but.
Okay, because I watch that pretty carefully, and if there's any debris, I've been kind of cleaning it up a little bit myself right now, so. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And we'll share contact information so we can be in
absolutely.
touch. Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Anyone else on this particular project? Okay, then we're gonna take a 5-minute break. That might be a little longer. I don't know, but I need to go find out what's going on.
Thank you. And Supervisor, this item will be wrapped up and you'll move on to the next one post break. Oh, okay, so we'll stay here. We'll stay put.
I don't know that we have any more for this meeting. Yeah, if you guys want to take off, I think we've pretty much covered it because
Okay.
for this session, the public hearing staying open because we haven't reached the end of the 30-day
Right,
seeker.
right.
So,
Okay,
yep.
we'll stay put for a little
Okay.
while. Longer. Thank you. Yeah, let me bring my
I gotta get. I didn't know.
All right, I just need Don there to unmute the main meeting room when you are all ready to resume.
So sorry about that. We needed to have a brief attorney-client session. So I will just note, I just had a discussion with the folks from Hempsol. They were not able to get the rest of the full floor plans to us, so they're gonna have them for the December 6th meeting. So again, we will, I will close that session of the
Are we gonna close it or are we gonna?
session. I'm not closing the
Oh,
public
sorry,
hearing,
okay.
and the public hearing will continue on December 6th.
So we'll leave it open.
Right, so the hearing is open. My point is the discussion regarding Hempsol, we're not gonna continue that on tonight.
Correct.
Okay, so getting back to this, so like I said, you know, there's obviously gonna be a number of things we're gonna have to address on both of these. They're a bit different. Excuse me, a bit different. One of the things that you may run into, you may be forced to go through the parkland alienation process. Having just gone through it, it's painful.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I question that because they ran their parkland through the middle of this property and essentially cut off the eastern portion of the property. But ultimately, that's a county decision because it's a county linear park. Their current stance is that it would be parkland alienation to even put a temporary road across it. Now, this gets into from a parkland alienation process. You know, the giving them the access road, that might be something, not building it, I mean, just leaving it as gravel, but that way that they can get their maintenance away vehicles or whatever, you know, you might be able to, or even just widen the swath on either side of that through that area. In other words, for parkland alienation, if I'm giving up 100 square feet, I have to get more than 100 square feet of equal or greater value, you know, back. So again, having just gone through it, I can certainly help you. It's not a fun process, though. It is a very lengthy process that involves the state legislature, Senate, the governor. Ours was further complicated that the park was built with federal land. So we also had to do federal parkland conversion process as well. So anyway, I just wanted you guys to be aware that that's potentially coming. And again, that's not going to be our decision. It's going to be a county decision.
Thank you.
Yep.
Would it be advisable for us to schedule time with the town and the county, or would it make sense for us to let the town circle back with the county initially? And
Yeah, we just heard that from the county this afternoon,
Right.
late this afternoon. So we'll circle back and yeah, we'll definitely, you know, look at potentially bringing in to see where where the county has to sit on that. That doesn't necessarily impact the special use permit. Obviously, you know, you're not going to move forward if you can't get a road to your property, but like I said, there really isn't another way to get a road out there without going through people's houses, through people's farms. It really is the only way to get there. So, but we'll see what they have to say. And then, you know, in terms of incentives, you know, so like I said, we might want to take a look at in that list from the Parks and Rec Board. I think I mentioned some of them to you in the workshop. So one of them is the band shell or the pavilion. That right now it's a tent-like structure that we put up and take down. It's nearing the end of its life. We've been talking about replacing it with a permanent structure. They have talked about sound, and I don't have the dollar amounts for all these. So I don't know if it's all or partial, depending on, you know, we're gonna have to figure out what that conversion rate is. I will say for a smaller farm, Genesee Land Trust, for a permanent, just to put it in perspective, for a smaller farm, similar to these acres, it was 6,000 an acre. So I mean, the preservation of farmland is a high value. You know, so like I said, in this case, I'm not necessarily looking for that, but if you're just gonna tie that, even just, you're looking at what it was, this 30 acres at Lehigh? What's
In
the,
terms of the replacement,
no, just
area?
in terms of the area that you're taking up with solar arrays,
yep, 32.
right?
Yep.
So even if you're looking at, you know, 5,000 an acre, not even doing the 3X, you know, you're talking in the 150K range. I
Yeah.
don't know if that works. In terms of, again, I did have some discussions with the landowner with regards to the possibility, could he find some farmland for the other one? Cause I basically told him, and I know he's not exactly tied into the other one. Could we do something for, you know, from a farmland standpoint instead? So, you know, you could talk to him. I don't know where he ended up with that. But, you know, maybe do that one as farmland preservation and do this one as the
ban shell.
in either case, it'd be incentive zoning. Don't let me be clear, but this one
Right.
would be, yeah, whether it's the ban shell, you know, and, or like I said, I'll get you that full list. They gave me the list.
Okay.
Those are the two that I remember off the top of my head. One of them was the Martin Road Park, developing the south side of the park with ball fields.
Okay.
So there were a number of projects that they're on our horizon to do sometime in the future. But obviously accelerating them and not having to use taxpayer dollars to do them, that would be great.
Yep.
So,
And I think down the line, we'd love to sort of sort out, you know, if it's not a monetary contribution, you know, how does it work from a procurement?
yeah, so
perspective and
basically
all
what we
those
can do
logistics?
is, again, it's not that we don't want you to get involved in procurement if we're building the ban shell and that type of stuff. We're not saying we're not going to cut a check for that project. We just don't want it to be this nebulous cash that just ends up in our pocket,
Got it.
right?
Okay.
It
Thanks.
needs to be what I'll call targeted towards a particular effort. Now, sometimes depending on, you know, what we do with some of the incentive zoning, sometimes the incentive zoning is with a developer who, you know, they might have a framing crew. So they might be able to build the thing for us, but that's not necessarily your case. But like I said, if we get into a discussion about, do we design the roof so that it can accept solar panels, that we would have a discussion with you guys directly and expect you guys to
Yep.
put the solar panels up there. So like I said, we've got some discussion going forward. And it might make sense, you know, as you guys think about it, and if you want to, we have a meeting and bounce some ideas off of us, and that way you can then put together essentially a final proposal and say, here's what we were thinking. I won't say final, because obviously there'll be feedback here, but a more solid proposal as to what you think makes sense.
Okay.
For what you're doing.
Would it make sense for us to do that at a town board workshop or sort of an offline
I would think,
with staff?
the refinement and that type of stuff. So we typically have a meeting. It's myself, it's someone from the planning board, and it's our director of engineering and planning.
Okay.
That we can take a look at that and just give you, in other words, I've been doing this 6 years with the town board. I have a good feel for what stuff does and doesn't fly. Obviously, I can't commit the town board, but my point is I can help you refine that so that you can then bring it to the town board. And they can provide feedback on that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it would make sense, the meeting we're gonna do it would make sense to present it to the town board at the workshop. So that way, if they want to see a modification, if they think it's okay, then you're all set. You present it at the meeting and we're good to go. If
Okay.
there's modifications they'd like to see, that gives you time to get them in, bring them back and present them at the town board. So.
Perfect.
I at the time of the break, I can't remember. Bobby, did you have a chance to say everything you wanted to say in your? Oh, okay. Thank you.
He said yes.
Yes, sir.
I know, I'm telling you.
Oh.
I repeat
Record.
the stuff from the audience for the stenographer. Okay, I think we had someone with their hand raised. Is that correct? Is their hand still raised?
Yes, we have a hand raised in our audience, a virtual audience. This is Michelle Nicodemus. On just a minute.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I heard the earlier discussion with regard to the land that the solar project is potentially going up on, and the farming that was going on there at one point and may still possibly be going on. So there, I actually was surprised at how much farmland there was in Henrietta. I've only been the assessor there for about 2 years. Here, there. I'm virtual, so anyway, I can respect the concerns of the property owner of the contiguous parcel to the solar farm. The concern about, you know, losing that particular farmland. There are some solar projects that I've worked with in the past where the farmers and the solar entrepreneurs, I guess you could say, work together, and there is still farming then that can go on in conjunction with a solar project. There are all different types of not necessarily crops, but all different types of farming. I think the property owner next door mentioned vegetables in particular. So maybe that's a good compromise, but mainly why I wanted to comment was with regard to an agricultural exemption. So I'm assuming since there's a significant amount of land on this prospective solar project, that parcel, I'm assuming there's an agricultural exemption. So depending on whether or not this parcel is in an ag district or not. Sorry?
It is.
Okay. So I believe if I'm not mistaken, there's a difference between what the agricultural exemption chargeback would be. If it is in an ag district, I believe it would be 5 years as opposed to the 8 years if it is not in an ag district. So I just wanted to make that point, that, you know, it could be of great savings to the solar farm owner to continue farming the property. And maybe that would make the neighbor happy as well, or happier.
Great, thank you. I will note that like at the Ramelts, they're growing. Now, I don't know if they continue to for their agricultural exemptions there, but for instance, they're growing mums in between the solar arrays. They normally can't grow them outdoors because they get predated.
Right here.
Predatory, yeah. It's easier to say than the verb, but eaten by the deer. So with the security fence around the solar arrays, it keeps the deer out and the mums actually grow. But, you know, vegetables, that makes a lot of sense. You know, stuff that basically they go down the middle of the rows. It's stuff that has to do well in partial sun, because obviously depending on where the sun is overhead, they'll see partial sun, partial shade. So, but yeah, like I said, the one farm we have in today, or the one array we have in today on that farm, they have continued to grow mums, although I do not know whether they did or did not have a agricultural easement, and whether, I know they had to file an NOI. I don't know not agricultural easement, sorry, agricultural exemption. I don't know how that played out, but there are options.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. We are certainly factoring in that the ag exemption recapture payment for this project. And GreenSpark is very much interested in exploring agrivoltaics. In fact, we just responded to an RFI from NYSERDA today, who's kind of acknowledged the fact that an agrivoltaic simply refers to kind of co-location or more than co-location of solar and agricultural production from a really like robust perspective. NYSERDA, as a state agency that creates incentives to encourage this type of development, like they've realized that there just is not enough proof of concept to understand what works at scale. And so we're interested in pursuing, you know, how do we contribute to that body of research? So maybe there are future opportunities here for sure.
Thank you. Anyone else? Are there any other hands raised? Then I'm gonna close this session. We're gonna keep the public hearings open for the December 6th meeting. But for the 5, so it's special use permit application number 2023-42, and it's associated incentive zoning, and then it's permits 43 and 44 and their associated incentive zoning. I'm going to close those sessions this session, but we will keep those hearings open. I believe at the next meeting, I don't know that we'll get everything wrapped up, because again, based on the time for how many iterations we had to go through on the last one, I don't know that we're going to get it wrapped up at the next meeting, but I think that's the first meeting we would be eligible from a seeker standpoint to potentially rule. But, you know, one of the things that to get there, we're going to have to, you know, there was a lot of, I'll call it fact finding tonight with regards to the neighbors and how to mitigate those impacts. Because that's, again, one of the things that as I was saying earlier, that's the purpose of of a special use permit and the seeker process is how do I mitigate those adverse impacts on the neighboring properties? If they can, then we should approve. If they can't, then we should deny. And so that's basically where it sits. I thank you for your time spent here and your willingness to answer all the questions thrown at you. And you know, I understand that you know, again, it's a tough issue when you have, you know, that what's often referred to as a NIMBY, not in my backyard, but you know, when people do move to an area that okay, I want this area because it's more rural, but you know, again, property owners still have rights. And so it's how do you try to balance those? That's some of what is, you know, we try to accomplish with these meetings to, again, find out what the concerns are and what can we do to minimize those impacts. So again, the property to the north, theirs appears to be primarily visual. So let's make sure. And as you pointed out, the advantage is it's to the north. So you don't have to worry about if those trees grow big and tall. There's not a shading issue. You know, does it make sense to have a row of, it looks like there's already a row of deciduous trees. Do we add a row of conifers so that in the wintertime, they're not looking at the solar panels? You know, that's some of the stuff. And that's what we did look at in Remelt. There was one gap and we had them put a row of conifers in there to fill in the gap. So, like I said, that's some of the stuff we'll take a look at.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, board members, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next up, we have a public hearing for a proposed local law to amend the Town of Henrietta zoning code to address duration of approvals. For those curious what this means, our code currently states that there are essentially your special use permit or your variance gets locked in when you pull and do work on a building permit, except for the site plans. And I'm going to use the Masonic Care Community as an example. There's other things that they do expend a lot of time, effort, and resources that don't require a building permit. They require other types of building permits. In this case, they put in a pump station, which is more expensive than any house. I won't say any house, than a lot of houses. But when you add in the fact that they ran a force main under the thruway up Middle Road and then a gravity sanitary sewer all the way down Middle Road and put in connections for all the houses along the way, that's a lot of money and effort. No, by the way, that was one of the conditions of their special use permit approval. And by the letter of the law, that doesn't lock in their special use permit. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we're fixing that law. That's all this does. It basically says that if there are other actions taken, as you know, especially those that were a condition of special use permit, it just seems to me to make sense. That should lock in the special use permit. So does anybody have any questions, comments? Then hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend the Town of Henrietta zoning code to address duration of approvals. Next up, we have a proposed local law to require payment in lieu of taxes pursuant to real property tax law, section 487 for solar and wind energy systems. So this one came up actually because of this project. We did not opt out of the RPTL section 487 because in a lot of cases, if you require full taxation, and just to be clear, this is on the equipment, not the land's separate. But if you require full taxation on the equipment, they can't afford to do solar. And we believed it was important to do solar, and especially if we could tie it in with our farmland protection like we've done. But we don't want them to be tax-free, and under RPTL 487, if we don't notify them before I think it's a 30-day deadline, then we can't have them put on a pilot. By putting this in the code, it means anytime somebody comes in for an array, they're going to be required to do a pilot under 487. So it just gets rid of the possibility that, oops, the letter got lost, we didn't send it. For these people, when they were at that workshop, I handed them the letter. So we made sure we didn't miss this one, but just explaining what that one's for. So is there anybody who wishes to speak on this local law? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to require payment in lieu of taxes pursuant to real property tax law, section 487. Next up, we have a public presentation for the hearing for the 2024 preliminary budget. That doesn't look like our budget. Okay, so a lot of this is the same as the tentative budget. There was one change though, however, because the referendum, the ballot referendum for the spray park passed, so that added some costs. So I'm going to kind of focus on those changes. Go ahead. So again, the year in review was good. I'm going to skip this. The year in review didn't change, although my finance director might think it went downhill because we passed the referendum. Next. So the budget did go up. It's now 27.1 million. It was 26.1 million previously. If you remember in the spray park, it talked about the total cost was about 1.1 million. The reason it's only gone up $1 million is because what this board had talked about, we were already going to increase the tax levy by about $200,000 to offset the rising costs of especially healthcare and retirement, which saw double-digit increases this year. And the other things that, as I've said, that's happened is this town has been growing tremendously. We've not actually increased our tax levy for 5 years. That's kind of caught up to us. So we have enough to hold it for another year, but then we would essentially deplete our reserves, and we really didn't want to do that. So, but we also didn't want to see a $400,000 increase. So we decided that if the referendum passed, the increase would be 300,000. If the referendum didn't pass, we would leave it at the 200,000. So that's why, again, even though the referendum added 1.1 million, we subtracted out 100,000 or 0.1 million of that growth that we were going to use otherwise. Next. Eye candy, I just circled in red. That's where you'll see the impact from the referendum. It's a $200,000 levy that goes to the general fund for the construction of the spray park. Next. This looks fairly similar. Obviously, it's the left-hand bar is a bit taller. There's a little bit more in the project. The reason you see that last year is so out of line is because it included the construction of the town court. That was paid for predominantly from ARPA funds and other in tax windfalls. So we had a couple of years of just astronomical mortgage tax and sales tax. They've come back down to earth. They're still growing, but they're not way out of the park. So we were able to use that to build the town court. The great news about that is we didn't have to go out to bond. And what that means then is we don't have debt service that adds to the cost of operating the town in years to come. And in fact, once the new court's operational, we'll be able to close the lease that we had for the location of the old court. Next. Real growth versus total growth. I won't go into this again, but basically the town itself is growing by about between typically 2 to 3% every year. And then, you know, because of this crazy real estate market, there's been massive growth due to assessment as well. Next. So again, the impact on the projected tax levy, it's going to be an increase of 300,000. This is the first time since 2019 that we've put in an increase. In 2019, the increase was due to the construction and operation of the new library. That one was paid for by bonds, and so there is a significant debt service that the town's paying off. That again also passed by ballot referendum. Next. So as I mentioned, we had the double-digit increases. You know, one of the problems that we've seen at the library, not a problem at the library itself, but their costs, like everybody else's, is going up. And in some stuff, it's going up faster than the normal rate, yet the state aid has stayed flat. So not only do we have to pick up our growth, but we're also picking up a larger and larger share because the state is not increasing their aid to match what's happening with inflation. And therefore that burden is falling on the local taxpayers. So I will say, you know, if you haven't seen it, well, and it'll be out in the issue, the February, March issue of the town newsletter includes the slides from the State of the Town address. The growth in the use of the library, especially with the new facility, has been absolutely amazing. The programs they've put on, the resources, the amount of use. There were a bunch of people, I remember when the ballot referendum was up, who said, well, libraries are yesterday's things. That's not true. They are today's things. And especially, you know, for people who may not have good network access, they come to the library and use the Wi-Fi for their connectivity there. So it's been a great investment, but obviously there are costs. So next. So again, I've already touched on these. I'm just going to skip that. That really hasn't changed. Next. Just noting that, you know, the town court, that's not in there. That's not part of why this cost has gone up, because again, those were largely one-time funds. As I'll note, the capital expenditures have dropped tremendously because we're not building the town court. So like they dropped, what did it say, 86%? So it's soft focus for me at this point because I've been reading screens. Next slide. So the tax rate itself will go down. And that's due to the growth in the town. Our tax rate will be about 98 cents per thousand. Without the referendum, it would have been about 96 cents per thousand. So that's, so again, obviously that's 2 cents per thousand. So to put that in perspective, the median home in Henrietta is 275,000. So that means that 2 cents would see an extra about $5.71 on their tax bill to pay for both the spray park and the increase for the rising costs in the town. Next. So I will just note, because I hear from people all the time, oh, you said you didn't raise taxes, but the taxes went up. That's just the town. We only control the town portion. Well, we actually technically control the library, although it's based off of, or not the library, sorry, the ambulance, but it's based off of a formula. But we do not control the school district, the county, the fire district. And so a lot of times the increases, they all come on, the school comes on its own bill, but county, town, ambulance, fire, sewer, drainage, they all come on the same bill. And so a lot of times those increases are due to other taxing authorities, not us. Next. So again, I will note that that 98 cents is probably the first time in modern history that there's been a town tax rate below $1 per thousand. Our staff works very hard to be fiscally responsible and to keep the cost to the taxpayer down while offering as much service as we possibly can. A lot of work goes into doing that, and you know, next time you're in, you feel free to thank the staff for the work they do to make that happen. Next. So for the other stuff we control, the drainage district, the drainage levy remains the same, so you shouldn't see a change there. The sewer district, we actually were able to decrease it some, and some of this just has to do with fund balances. So a lot of these things have contingencies built into them. And if those contingencies don't come through, then we can pass some of those savings on to the subsequent year. Park district went the other way. With the large growth in the number of park districts, we've not been able to keep up with them, and park districts include parks as well as some of the parks as well as some of the green belts. So we are putting on additional equipment and personnel to address that. And so we will see an increase. It's about, again, $2.28 per unit. Next. So we are adding 1 full-time cleaner. We're adding 5.5 full-time equivalent golf course personnel. I will note that the golf course personnel, I don't know necessarily about year one, but in subsequent years are put it this way, our goal is to get it to where those positions are funded by the revenues from the operation of the golf course. Next. So the only change on this slide is that under the capital outlays, there's a construction of the new spray park. But you know, we already had planned on the new golf course clubhouse and maintenance barn, whether that's a totally new facility or whether that's acquiring the existing facility and upgrading that. Next. So this is a breakdown. The large green portion you see there, most people think of that as personnel. The state calls it personal services. And whenever we put these out, people say, you got the wrong word there. Believe it or not, we don't. State does lots of things I don't understand. This is just one of them. But that's obviously the largest portion of our costs. And that's because we do a whole lot in this town and we need the personnel to do it. But, you know, some of that, what we've done, like we've shrunk some of our contractual services because we found it to be more cost effective to bring our cleaning services in-house. So we switched that from external contracts to internal employees. And not only was it more cost effective, but there is that pride of ownership. And if you talk to our cleaners, boy, they take pride in their work. And it shows. We always had issues with the cleanings of the library and the rec center in the past. Since we brought that internal, it's improved tremendously. Next. So this is the different operations financed by the tax levy. The two biggest are highway in orange and library in yellow. A lot of the general operations here are financed by sales tax revenues, mortgage tax revenues, In the building and department and engineering, they're largely funded by building permit fees, plan review fees, things like that. A lot of their costs is passed through. And then, like I said, for the general operation, it's largely covered by the other revenue sources. Next. So some of the other announcements, these ones are specifically for the town and just trying to summarize them all. So again, our tax levy is going up $300,000, which is about a 7% increase. I'm sorry, the rate is a 7% decrease. The increase, I didn't put the percentage there, 300 over 4 million. I don't remember what the percentage was. Sorry about that. The drainage is staying the same. As I mentioned, sanitary sewers going down and park districts are going up. Next. From what I've heard from other taxing jurisdictions, so the central school district, that's already out. So that was about a 2.7% increase in their levy, but it was about a 12% decrease in their rate. The proposed budget from the county executive has a 0 increase in the tax levy. And countywide, that would be about a 12% decrease. And then the Henrietta Fire District has a 14.6% increase in their tax levy. Even with the large growth in the town, that means their rate will go up by about 3.8%. And then CHS Mobile, that's a 3% levy increase, or about a 7.4% rate decrease. I will just note that you can see they're on very different scales. The fire district increases 2 million plus. The ambulance increases 26,000. So very different scales we're looking at here. And I think that is there one more, or is that it? That's it. So any questions on the budget? Anything online? Okay, then hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the 2024 preliminary budget. And next we have a proposed local law to override the tax limit for fiscal year 2024. So as part of the tax cap programs, one of these other things I don't understand with the state, the reason we're exceeding the tax cap is because the voters decided to pass the referendum on the spray park. So you would think that stuff that was passed by voter referendum would be excluded from the cap calculation because the voters already approved it, but that's not how it works. So we have to have a public hearing with regards to our override of the tax levy. Is there anybody who wishes to give comment with regards to the override? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to override the tax levy limit for fiscal year 2024. That concludes our public hearings. Can I get my first resolution?
Yes, sir. First resolution is resolution number 24-383/2023 to approve and or ratify the following agreements.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Councilmember Page?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Hold on, there's quite a bit of scrolling here, so give me just a second. Here we go. Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-384/2023 to authorize bills payable and any associated contracts or agreements for November 3rd, 2023 through today, November 15th, 2023. Seconded.
Any discussion? I do love the discussion from the back. I love hearing babies coo. We should have them at every meeting. Hearing no further discussion. Well, actually, I will just say for the bills payable, a huge chunk of this is like 800,000 of that was for the payment for retirement. It basically, it goes out in one giant payment to the state, so. I don't know if it's one giant payment, but a giant payment, so. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-385, 2023. To respond to Office of Cannabis Management notice regarding cannabis license applications.
Second. So as I mentioned, we've received a total of 15 applications for cannabis. Obviously, they're not all going to be granted. And so when we get these, we have to respond to the Office of Cannabis Management. Most of these go out as they haven't gotten their special use permit, so we can neither approve nor oppose, but. Any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 24-386, 2023 to award the bid for the Riverton Municipal Golf Course Clubhouse and Maintenance Barn.
Second.
So I will note that we strengthen the language in this to basically make it clear that we may not, even though we've selected the winning bid responses, we may not award this because there's been some last minute discussions with the property owner for the existing clubhouse. But because our next meeting isn't until December 6th, we wanted to have this approved so that if that doesn't work out, we can get this started and get stuff ordered with the hopes of getting started before the snow flies. So when I contact the companies, I will reiterate that to make it clear that it may not happen. I will also let them know that if it doesn't happen, I know there is going to be contractor work at the existing site because it needs a lot of work. So that's where we're sitting. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything
Nope, that's good.
to that, but if there's any questions from the public. Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-387/2023 to accept the dedication of roadways and sidewalks for Forest View subdivision.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-388, 2023 to accept the dedication of roadways and sidewalks for Winter Garden subdivision.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-389, 2023 to authorize the supervisor to sign a partial abandonment of drainage easement for 57 and 63 Park Acre Road.
Second. So I'll just note that the portion of the easement that runs along the back of the property lines is staying. That carries the drainage away, but this was a portion in between the two property lines that turned out not really to be necessary, not for us to maintain. So this will allow them to essentially have full control over that drainage themselves. Any questions? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 24-390, 2023 to update the 2024 building and fire prevention fee schedule to add property maintenance charges.
Second.
So this is right out of our code. We noticed we'd been charging this amount, but It's in the code, but it doesn't give a specific dollar amount, so we are putting it in the fee schedule so that someone doesn't have to ask us, what's the fee? Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-391/2023 to update the 2024 Town Clerk's Office fee schedule.
Second.
So the county lowered the replacement fee for dog park access cards from $20 to $10. So we're just updating our fee schedule.
Oh, this is good news for people like me.
Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-392/2023 to authorize the purchase of a new phone system with equipment from Mattel and installation and service from Relcom. Seconded.
So I would like to thank our Director of IT, Andrew, Stewart, with regards to all the work he's put in to find the best solution, both in terms of cost effectiveness and feature set and ease of conversion from our current phone system. Our current phone system are Mitel, and the advantage of Relcom is they're just down the street. And so it allows us to get really good service. You know, we had an issue with one of the phones breaking. They were here the very next morning with the replacement phone. So it's a great solution and very cost effective. Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-393/2023 to declare items surplus materials from the IT department.
Second. Any discussion? We did look into whether these had any value for organizations. They really do not. We've already scavenged them for parts, so they're essentially not, they really don't have any value. Hearing and seeing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 24-394/2023. Whereas Adair Jensen has donated $47.50 to the Henrietta Public Library for the purchase of electronic audiobooks. And whereas a check in the amount of $47.50 was received by the library director. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Adair Jensen for her generosity.
Second.
Discussion?
Thank you very much for donating to the library. They really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's, as I mentioned, the library does a great job, and if nothing else, you just have to see how many people donate time, money, equipment. It's amazing. Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 24-395/2023 to make appropriate budget transfers to the 2023 adopted budget.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-396, 2023 to hire personnel and make the attached changes.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Somebody's got an open mic. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-397, 2023 to adopt local law number 11 of 2023, approving a tax cap override for the town of Henrietta 2024 budget.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 24-398, 2023 to adopt the fiscal year 2024 preliminary budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, resolution number 24-399/2023 to adopt local law number 12 of 2023 to amend the town of Henrietta zoning code to address duration of approvals, including special use permits, site plans, and variances.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-400, 2023 to adopt the local law number 13 of 2023 to require payment in lieu of taxes pursuant to real property tax law, section 487 for solar and wind energy systems.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24401, 2023 to authorize a letter of credit to cover work for the streetlight conversion from RG&E assets to town assets.
Second. So, this is part of a very long process to convert all of our streetlights to LED, saving money. The interesting thing about it's being done through an energy performance contract, which means there's no out-of-pocket taxpayer dollars being spent towards this. Basically, the way it works is the equipment gets purchased on a lease. The lease is paid for by the savings in energy costs. And then the savings above and beyond that will be going into a fund to help cover the maintenance of the lights. So we're going to be taking over the maintenance from RG&E. For those who have street lights out, they know that RG&E is not always the most responsive. So we'll be taking that over, although hopefully with it being all brand new lights, we won't see the issues that we've seen with some of the older lights. What this work is for is once we take over the lights, our contractor, as he does the upgrades, he's going to be installing service disconnects so to isolate our streetlights from the RG&E grid. And so RG&E requires a letter of credit. In case we don't finish it, they can pull that letter of credit and finish the work themselves. So we don't ever expect this to be expended, but that's the way it works. Any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Do we have any additional comments from the public?
I do have a hand raised in our virtual audience. If you're ready for me.
Were you? If you wanted to speak, yeah, go ahead. About anything. We had someone in the audience who's been waiting patiently.
Oh, no, I was just going to figure out what this was like before I come for my real meeting.
Oh, okay.
But I don't. So regarding Impact Earth with the composting facility, I understand that we're supposed to get a notification like 30 days before they come for their special use hearing. And it's for properties within 500 feet. I'm wondering, can that be extended to the Window neighborhood? Because I know that they are affected by this, regardless of what Pat Wardinger says.
Sure. So you're saying that
Because we went trick or treating there in that neighborhood and we could smell the odor.
Chris
we
Martin, are you still on? You're muted if you answer.
Yes, I am.
Could
What was
you
the
make sure if that special use permit comes in that the notification is expanded,
Yes,
the window? Okay.
you can do that.
Again, we do have a grant application in right now. Well, let me rephrase it. We're completing a grant application. The process is incredibly lengthy. It's something called EEBCGF, energy. I don't remember what the second E is. I guess it's conservation block grant is the CBG. But anyway, it would be to move that away from homes to put it on our former fill site, because to the east is a giant bog.
But you have no.
What's that?
You don't really have any idea a time frame.
I don't. It's involves federal.
So I mean, we could be looking at like years.
Hopefully not years. The neat thing is that we were pre-approved for, based on the size of our community. When they did this in Congress, they set aside a certain amount of money that goes direct to communities if we submit a qualifying project. And basically methane gas reduction as well as landfill diversion are qualifying projects. So this will work. I just don't know how long, but I have no idea how long it will take them to say, yes, your thing is good based off of that approval. You know,
What happens if it doesn't get approved?
then we wouldn't be able to, well, I shouldn't say we wouldn't be able to, we'd have to figure out another way to pay for potentially moving it there.
The town would pay for it to be moved?
I'm not saying we would pay for it to be moved. I'm saying right now it would be being paid for by a federal grant. And the idea is that would also become our leaf drop-off zone. So it's centrally located instead of being in the southwest corner of town. And that way the leaves can actually be used to cover the compost, which also produces better compost and helps reduce the odor. The challenge we've had is we get assurances up and down that they're gonna fix the issue, and from the
Do you know when?
smell of it, apparently they have not.
Do you know, probably not, when that, special use permit, it's on Craig's desk, he said, when it might be at this meeting, when the hearing might be?
I don't know if it's been scheduled. If you want to send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org, we can get you that answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, could I just get your name for the record? I'm sorry.
Sarah Neslin?
Thank you very much.
And an adorable assistant. Okay, you said you had someone online?
I do. Yes, let me just go back to that screen. I have Michelle Nicodemus with a hand raised.
Go ahead.
Hello again. I don't know if, just a real quick thing about the whole ag exemption thing, and then I had some questions on a different topic. So the agricultural exemption renewals are usually sent out right about this time. And Charlene Stephanie, I know, worked for years and years with the farmers, and she had a specific system that she used for them to file those exemptions. So for those that are tuned in, I don't know if they stuck around till the end here, but Charlene is no longer with the department. So it would be a good idea to get reacquainted with the new members of the department, just to make sure that something isn't missed if you're used to a certain process and we're not aware of it. So that's all I want to say about the agricultural exemption renewals. My other comments, questions are related to the coordinated assessment program with the town of Rush and the town of Henrietta. So my first question was when the either Mr. Supervisor or town board members, when this started to be a topic of discussion, when you started considering this as an option.
Due to the possibility of a pending legal action, I am going to refrain from answering most of these questions.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm assuming that, you know, this was an undertaking as it was in the best interests of well, the town of Henrietta, but I'm assuming, you know, obviously you wouldn't do anything to harm the town of Rush. So I guess the best interest of both. Would I be correct in asking that or
Yes.
assuming that?
Both, so the town board of Henrietta felt it was in the best interest of Henrietta, and the town board of Rush felt it was in the best interest of Rush.
Okay, and may I ask if the budget was affected at all as a result of this endeavor? As an increase or decrease to the assessment department?
With it being new, it's, I believe we looked at it neutral. So at the time we were putting the budget, we weren't certain which way it was gonna go. We believe there will be a savings overall, but again, hard to predict since it's our first year, will be our first year in the coordinated assessment program.
Okay, so it sounds like finances was not necessarily the motive for moving forward with this project. So were there any other objectives with regard to entering into this?
Again, without speaking to our attorney, I'm gonna avoid answering some of these questions.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, as this is the last day of my employment with the town of Henrietta, I do want to take a moment to thank all of you. I have learned a lot working for the town of Henrietta. As you know, I am a bit of a greenhorn compared to other assessors in my field. I do wish that, you know, there, things could have turned out a bit differently, but I wish everyone the best, and I hope you do the same.
We do. We thank you for your service, and we hope that you find gainful employment going forward and that you have a good, productive career.
Yeah, my daughter does too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Anything else online? Then do we have any announcements from the town board reports?
Seeing Henrietta Through Your Eyes is getting ready to wrap up. The deadline is November 23rd. So if you have anything, pictures, photos, artwork, anything of Henrietta, please get it in. The library is accepting donations. They had a great used book drive, and so they are accepting donations for books, CDs, etc. And tomorrow at the library, an MCC professor, Mark Sample, is telling the story of the tragic day that JFK was assassinated, and that will be tomorrow night from 7 to 8. There's still space, so come on down and listen to that. It's the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. It's crazy. It's been 60 years. That's all I got.
Anyone else?
I attended the CHS Board of Directors meeting. They just reported, I made some notes. This is the first year the fundraising is really down. They do a fundraiser in the community. And you know, I just think the cost of everything and inflation is affecting that. The direct pay bill, which was called up by the governor. Called up means that they're going to discuss it, but the inside information seems to be that the insurance lobbies are still so strong that they don't have much hope that that'll go through.
Yeah.
And
It's
they
something
also-
called a pocket veto, I think.
A
is
pocket
what
veto,
they're
exactly.
thinking. It basically just means puts in the pocket, doesn't sign the bill.
Yeah.
And it just kind of dies.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
and they also talked as the leaders of that organization, how frustrated they are with the number of calls they have to cover, especially in Brighton, where there doesn't seem to be any movement in trying to address their inability to handle their calls. But
For people who don't understand what this is about, so when you go to your doctor and you give it to the insurance will pay your doctor straight. If you get an ambulance ride and it's covered by insurance, the insurance sends the check to you, and then you have to then sign that check over to the ambulance. Well, as you can imagine, there's a number of people who never sign that over. And so the ambulance is short that money. That creates a hardship for them. And to be honest, the reimbursements they get from the insurance agents, and especially for Medicare, don't cover the cost to begin with. And then to lose, you know, a good percentage of them for people who pocket the money for themselves instead of sending it over to the ambulance, it's crazy. And the fact that they won't fix this, I don't understand why the insurance companies fight it, because the money's going to they're paying the money anyways. Now, the wrong people are cashing those checks, but they're still out that money. So I don't understand why they're fighting it, but they are.
Yep. That's it.
Do you have anything, Millie, or? So the town newsletter will probably be out. We'll get to the press over Thanksgiving break, so probably looking at coming out in early December. That's about it. Thank you very much. We have executive session for matters regarding the acquisition of real property, so we will be adjourning straight from executive session. But like I said, we will adjourn from the public session into executive session. So I will make that motion that we adjourn to executive session.
Second.
Hearing and seeing no objections, meeting adjourned to executive session. Thank you for everybody who attended. Have a good night.